Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Jersey.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
We are live on a Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. Well, the Phillies lost out west. It was a very Aaron Nola. It was a quintessential Aaron Nola start last night, was it not? That's about as Aaron Nola of a start as you can get from Aaron Nola. We'll explain coming up. Here on the Bash, Frank Close, our Phillies insider, answers your Phillies mailbag questions. If you have questions for the mailbag, send them in at 609-403-0973. At what point are you so bugged by what's happening that you start to become, I don't want to say irrational. I've seen the irrational takes. But at what point do we start to now have concerns? You know, the Phillies go out west, they play a very good Dodgers team, and they lost. Is that the end of the world? Losing to the Dodgers in L.A.? It was a good game. It was a very Nola game. You know, Aaron Nola is a very good pitcher, but he is not a Cy Young Award-winning ace type of pitcher. And last night, Aaron Nola was Aaron Nola. It was a quintessential Aaron Nola game. He went 6 innings. He gave up 8 hits. He gave up 4 runs. The Phillies went up 2, right? You have the positive vibes. You're up 2, and then you give them 4. And then you knew after he gave you 4 in the third that Nola's going to settle back in, and they're the only 4 runs he's going to give up. He just has the one bad inning that he just can't get out of, and now it's 4-2. And then it's 4-3, and you're right there. And then is when you cough up the 1 run in the 8th, and now you're 2 runs down, and you end up losing. I mean, it was as predictable as could be that they were going to lose that game last night, 5-3, it felt like. It's just Aaron Nola, quintessential. 6 innings, gives up all 4 runs in the 1 inning. He got hit hard. He gives up the home run, and then he settles right back in. And for the most part, he pitched a pretty darn good game, except for the third inning. And look, that's the Aaron Nola that we've come to know so many times over the course of regular season outings, is that he just has the 1 inning that does him in. And it's that 1 inning that you can't overcome. And why is that? Because your offense again hit the snooze button. It's another terrible night. Now, Tyler Glass now is really good. But 9 strikeouts, 5 hits. You got him out in the 6th inning. You got into the Dodger bullpen, and Buckus couldn't get anything going against Hudson and Banda and Kopech. Just a really solid bullpen for the Dodgers, and the Phillies lose that game. It's a frustrating loss for a number of reasons because, quite frankly, you need a win. You got to try to stay 500 out on this trip. You got another chance tonight with Sanchez against Kershaw. Looking forward to seeing what the lineup is. We won't have that by the time our show ends today, but obviously you got a left-handed pitcher in Kershaw. What does that mean for the lineup tonight in a lineup that is really, struggling? It's really struggling right now. Last night, go through it real quick. Schwarber had a hit, 2 strikeouts. Turner, I thought, hit the ball well a couple times on the screws. He drove one out to left center field, but he's been really struggling. Turner was at 248 at one point. You know what he's hit? 348 at one point. He's at 308 now. I mean, he's dropped 40 points. That's a big number to drop at this stage of the season. 40 points. Harper's been terrible. 3 strikeouts again last night. And it's at the point there's a little concern because Glasnow last night. Now, Glasnow throws 98 cheddar. I mean, I'm not saying that Glasnow has some mediocre fastball, but he's throwing 98 and zipping it right past you. He's got no concern with challenging Bryce Harper with a fastball right down the middle. And Harper just swings through it. And the hit that Harper had last night was kind of like a little excuse me down the left field side. When you're going the opposite way, the way he did there, it wasn't because he wanted to go the opposite way. He just got overpowered and, fisted it that way. So Harper, 3 strikeouts. It did not look good in striking out 3 times last night. Bohm had a hit and an RBI. His RBI was kind of a weak sauce. He just kind of chopped it over the pitcher's head last night. But, hey, that made it 4-3, but they just couldn't do anything. Brandon Marsh, awful last night. Had bad at-bats, 3 strikeouts. Again, I got to get him out of that 5-hole. He cannot hit in that important of a position in the lineup. The problem is I don't have a good enough answer for you. This is a team for me that 5 through 9 is just not good enough. 5 through 9 is not good enough, and 1 through 4 right now ain't getting it done. And hence you have a team that is hitting the struggle bus right now. Look, a team with the struggle bus is 20 games over 500, by the way. The Phillies are 20 games over 500. But there is no doubt they are hitting the struggle bus, and in large part what I see is the top 4 in the lineup are really struggling, and the bottom 5 just aren't good enough. Brandon Marsh is not good enough. Castellanos is so inconsistent. He had 2 hits last night, and Stott is killing you. Stott's killing you. He's offering nothing in terms of he has basically regressed so much so. He's on base 320, not good. No slug. Stott's offering nothing. I mean, he is a below replacement level player at this point. The Hayes kid had 2 hits last night. He's at 250. But again, we talked about this on the trade deadline. You added Austin Hayes, he hit 8th last night. He's essentially, you added a 9-hole hitter. So you're taking a look around and you're saying, what's up with this team? You're kind of seeing, as we are a little over 100 games into the season, I think the Phillies have about 50 games left, is if your top half ain't good, your bottom half's certainly not good enough. And that's a big problem. The inconsistencies of this lineup have been a problem in playoff losses of the past. And if your top half of the lineup's not going to produce, you're getting a playoff preview of what a guy like Glasnow brings to the table, and then the back end of a bullpen that can really come after you. Kopech had a strikeouts, Banda had 2, and Hudson shut you down. You had a really good, and Hudson's really solid at the back end of that Dodger bullpen. Their bullpen is not, it's not lights out like it used to be when they had, who's the guy who's in Boston now? Who's the closer that used to pitch for the Dodgers is in Boston? Jansen. When Jansen used to come in, he was pretty lights out. They're not quite that good on the back end. But this is what happens when you get into the playoffs and you face a guy like Glasnow. And one of the problems with the Dodgers is they don't have great pitching. Kershaw's going to go tonight. He's left-handed, though. That gives the Phillies problems. But Glasnow, he's the kind of guy to get you. He's the kind of guy that can really shut a team like the Phillies down because they just strike out too much. He had 9 strikeouts. They had 12 strikeouts as a team last night. Stubbs, 2 strikeouts in the 9-hole last night. The lineup's just not good enough. Got a text message coming in, 609-403-0973. Nola's a high-end 3, good stuff. Eats a lot of quality innings, inconsistent in big games. Yeah, I mean, Nola's been what he is over the last couple of years. He's a guy that he eats a ton of innings. He generally gives you quality starts. He has pitched really well in some big games and not so well in some big games. He is not an A-plus quality number 1. We know that. But quite frankly, I love how people are like, this guy's not that, this guy's not. There aren't any of those guys in baseball. There's like 5 guys who are like legitimate. Look at the Cy Young Award odds right now. You can't name 5 guys in all of baseball who are like number one aces. This game just doesn't have them anymore. Nola is kind of an old school, guy that he just kind of gives you his quality starts. He'll go 6 or 3 runs and then every now and then he has a big game where he goes deep into the 8th. And then he has another game where he's not so good. But there's just not a lot of high-end quality pitching that gets you deep into games anymore. Nobody has them. I mean, Glasnow last night, he pitched a really good game. Him and Nola's lines were almost, very similar. Glasnow went 6, Nola went 6. 5 hits for Glasnow, 8 hits for Nola. 3 runs for Glasnow, 4 runs for Nola. I mean, the difference is Glasnow had 9 strikeouts, Nola had 4. I mean, but you know what their ERAs are, Nola and Glasnow? You want to take a guess? They are identical, 3.54. Both of them have the exact same ERA. It was so close last night that Nola threw 63 strikes and Glasnow threw 62. Now, I think most people would say Tyler Glasnow is a better pitcher than Aaron Nola are. The numbers suggest they're essentially the same guy. Nola, Glasnow has 164 strikeouts this year and a 0.95 whip. That's really good. And as for Nola, he's got a 110 whip. Really good. 134 strikeouts. I mean, him and Glasnow have been almost identical this year. And last night, Glasnow was slightly better of the two. So we'll see what ends up happening, as this series continues tonight. We're in a weird spot in the season where you're kind of hitting the dog days of summer. And you're out west for like another week here. I mean, the Phillies have tonight, tomorrow, and then they got 4 more in Arizona. So not kind by the schedule makers. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973 is the text board. By the way, Phillies go from here to Arizona for 4. They come home and play Miami for 2, Washington for 4. They go to Atlanta, then Kansas City. So that Atlanta, Kansas City, Houston, Atlanta, that's another tough little stretch there where we talked about this a little bit yesterday. The Dodgers are obviously playing for number 1 seed. Arizona's in the wild card right now. Atlanta's battling for the wild card. I think Atlanta, San Diego, and Arizona at one point last night, and it might still be the case, were all tied in the wild card race. They were all exactly tied in the wild card race. And yes, they are all 3 of them are tied in the wild card race. Atlanta was 4 games up in the wild card. They are now tied with Arizona and San Diego, and the Mets are a game and a half back. Then Pittsburgh is 4 back. So the separation in the National League is starting to happen. It looks like it's in Atlanta, Arizona, San Diego, the Mets, and then there's a little bit of a drop-off there. That's where the drop-off is. But even with this, the Phillies, again, struggling last night. They lose. Atlanta had the night off, and now Atlanta gains a half a game. They are 5.5 back in the East. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. So you take a look at the standings. The Phillies 5.5 games up. But what happened last night now is the Dodgers have tied you in the win column. The Phillies have 1 less loss, so they lead on percentage points over the Dodgers for the number 1 seed in the National League overall race, if you want that number 1 seed in the National League. But this is a situation where people want to look at every problem that the Phillies have. And we can. We can certainly look at them, and we can be 100% open and honest about what their problems are. I don't think – I've said this for a while now. Not the biggest Marsh guy in the world, but I understand what Marsh brings to the table. To me, Marsh is a platoon guy, and he's hitting in the number 5 hole. That's just – come on. You're not winning a World Series with Brandon Marsh hitting in the 5 hole. That's just not who he is. You want to tell me Brandon Marsh is hitting in the 8 hole? Fine. You can win a World Series with Brandon Marsh hitting in the 8 hole. You ain't winning a World Series with Brandon Marsh hitting in the 5 hole. They did not address that. I saw something today. The kid Rooker, who is out in Oakland. And I don't know what it would have taken to get him. But you have to absolutely start to think about what this team would have looked like with Brent Rooker in the middle of the lineup. You ready for these numbers? Since June 24th, okay? June 24th now. You're going back over the entire month of July into June and now a week into August. You want to hear Rooker's numbers? 350 batting average, 427 on base, 764 OPS, 28 runs scored, 6 doubles, 15 homers, 37 RBI, 5 stolen bases in 34 games. You don't think that dude would have looked nice hitting behind Bryce Harper? I don't know what you would have had to give up, but I certainly would be rethinking that decision. I get it. What were you going to do with him? Where could he play? I don't know the last time Rooker was in the field, but I find a way to get that guy in my lineup. Because this lineup, as I said yesterday, and have been saying since they made the move to Marsh to the 5-hole, and I get it, they don't really have an answer in the 5-hole. They just don't have a guy. They just don't have a prototypical 4-5 guy in this lineup. 609-403-0973. Couple text messages. Mike, yesterday you asked our fans worried, and I thought not really with Suarez and Walker out and the bats going cold as an aberration, but last night had me thinking a bit differently. Essentially, in the playoffs against LA, the pitching matchup would be the same, and the Phillies lineup would be identical. We will see what transpires over the next week. I can't help but remembering how the offense completely went cold against the Astros and the Diamondbacks the last 2 years. Can we expect a different outcome this year? That's from Phil. Phil, I agree with you. You know, that's the problem. The Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm, Castellanos, Real Muto, that core, we know how streaky and up and down they are. When they're good, man, they carry you against the Braves. When they're good, they carry you against the Padres. But when they're bad, they kill you against the Diamondbacks, and they kill you against the Astros. And that's the problem. They didn't address the lack of consistency that some of those guys bring to the table. They tried with Merrifield. Merrifield was the guy that they kind of bring in as like, hey, he's the consistent guy. He kind of 270. You know, he doesn't strike out. He puts the ball in play. And that did not work. And they didn't address it at the deadline. This Hayes is come on, you're hitting Hayes in the 9-hole. I mean, what are you doing? You went out and got a guy and said, hey, we basically polished a turd. I mean, that's what you told me. You got Rojas hitting 9. You replace him with a guy who's hitting, you know, Rojas can hit 240. He's hitting 238. So come on with that. That was a move that didn't make you any better. The Hayes move did nothing for you. Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. Mike, you hit it right on the money. Most teams that made moves got 3, 4, 5 hitters. The one bat the Phillies got at the deadline went straight to the 9 spot where all the chips in urgency. Yeah, I've been saying for a while, the right-handed power bat in the middle of this lineup, that's what they've needed to get. They didn't get it last year. It cost them. They didn't get it again this year. I think it'll cost them again. I mean, I hope Brandon Marsh proves me so wrong. But you cannot win a World Series with Brandon Marsh hitting number 5 in this lineup. He can't hit lefties, and for God's sakes, he barely hits righties. I mean, can he hit righties? Sure, he's been better. Brandon Marsh is hitting 248. He's hitting 248. He's not a good hitter. I take a look at it from this aspect. If you don't upgrade that number 5 spot in the lineup, the same thing that doomed you the previous 2 years will repeat itself. If you don't improve, you are bound to repeat yourself, right? And I think the Phillies this offseason had a chance to do one move to kind of upgrade and tinker just a little bit. And they didn't do it. And then at the deadline, when push came to shove and there were a couple of options out there, instead of rocking the boat, they decided to keep on floating down the river. And unfortunately, I think that's what ends up costing you. You know, they got a little bullpen upgrade, and what do they do the first week they got a bullpen upgrade? They blew a save. I don't want to say a save, but they blew a game in which they had a 5-run lead. You could have possibly added another starting pitcher, and instead you start Orion Kerkering in a game, followed by Kobe Allard. Now, Allard pitched all right, but that's really what you're going to go with? A Kerkering opener and followed by an Allard? Come on. That's not getting you through the summer. So the guys that you relied so heavily on in the first half, you had to know that those guys played way over their heads. Come on, Sanchez and Suarez and Strom and Hoffman, great stories. And how much could you have bet on them to do what they did in the second half, in the first half, again in the second half? That's a far-fetched one for me. This team needed a little bit of an infusion of something. Getting a closer is a nice piece, but I don't think it's the infusion that this team ultimately needed to get over the top. A guy like Brent Rooker would probably have been a perfect piece smack dab in the middle of this lineup. It's the one thing, right? It's the one thing that this team has constantly struggled with is the middle of that lineup. The Harper spot when he's burning ice cold. That Turner spot when he's chilly. They all seem to go together. Could you have got someone wedged in the middle there that maybe turned the tides? I like Bohm as much as the next guy, but he's not a four-hole hitter either. You know, Bohm's best spot situated probably, perfect world, he's probably hitting sixth. So that could be the thing as we take a look back on that we end up saying, man, that would have been a big difference. I think looking back at it, I was talking to a guy today about this. Now that we're like 2 weeks past, I said, man, I saw those Rooker numbers. And I said, thinking about this now, they really should have just gone all in for a guy like that. A right-handed bat that could have hit in the 4 spot. Because then, you hit Bohm 5, maybe you hit Real Muto 6, and you can hit Marsh or Castellanos 7, depending on, you know what I'm saying? To hit Marsh in the 5 hole, this lineup, come on. It's not going to get it done. It's not going to get it done. 609-403-0973. That's where we start today. Over on our website, 973ESPN.com, with what I just said, I say relax, Phillies fans, because I see so much Rob Thompson hate out there right now. The Phillies don't have a Rob Thompson problem. As the losing continues, fans often look for someone to blame. The key players are struggling. We like to blame the one guy we as fans think we could supplant ourselves, the manager. Most fans are smart enough to understand that you're not capable of playing at the major league level. However, many fans who blame the manager do think they are capable of managing a major league game. If Thompson makes a move that you disagree with, it's gospel that the move you would have made would have worked when the move he makes didn't. Case in point, we talked about it Saturday night's game. Kobe Allard, a guy with a 6.50 ERA, was pitching pretty well. He struck out 4, gave up 2 hits. He walked 2. He had 4 strikeouts in 4 innings. He gave up 1 run. Sounds like a good game to me. Thompson made the decision to turn the game over to his all-star relief pitcher, Jeff Hoffman, to face the 2, 3, and 4 spots of the Seattle lineup. Who do you want facing 2, 3, and 4? The right-hander against righties or Kobe Allard? That's not even a decision. You go to the All-Star with a 1.72 ERA and a 1 whip. He has 63 strikeouts in 47 innings. Yet people complained yesterday that pulling Allard for Hoffman was the wrong move. In what world would any listener rather have Allard pitching in a game over Hoffman? But because Hoffman didn't get the job done, the second guessing was that Thompson's move cost the Phillies the game. Hoffman gave up uncharacteristically 4 hits and 4 runs. That's not what Jeff Hoffman has done all season long. Statistically speaking, that's the move. And by the way, the Phillies likely mapped the game out beforehand and said, listen, we want to go Kerkering for 1, Allard for 4, then hopefully we're in position to close out the last 4 innings with the mix of Hoffman, Strahm, Alvarado, and Estevez. Mission accomplished. Thompson did his job. Hoffman did not. The Phillies will take that setup every night if they can get into the playoffs, where the starting pitcher hands the ball over to two all-star relievers, Alvarado and Estevez. That's the blueprint. That's the map. Conversely, when the lineup is struggling as much as it is right now, Thompson doesn't have a lot of moves to make. Sitting Turner and Harper and Schwarber, that's not the answer. If those guys aren't performing, there's not a lot Thompson can do. You know, a lot of fans like the manager guy who lights a fire, some show emotion. That's not Thompson's style. However, his laid-back demeanor, that's what makes the Phillies so good. When they're playing really good, they follow his lead. That doesn't mean every button Thompson pushes is the right one. Of course it doesn't. But what many fans don't realize is that many of the lineup decisions are made internally with the front office and in advance of the game. You know, people say, why is Stubbs playing? Or why don't they do this? That was probably decided 3 weeks ago that Stubbs was going to play tonight and Real Muto was going to get the night off. Why? Well, you got Kershaw, a lefty, pitching tomorrow, so they don't want to give him the night off or have Stubbs play tomorrow against a left-handed pitcher. Thompson and most managers' job in the majors right now, in the world we live in, is to set the culture in the dugout and in the clubhouse and the personality of the team on the field. The Phillies have won 57% of their games under Rob Thompson. They've been to a World Series, a National League Championship Series. And this season, they got off to a scorching hot start. But sometimes over 162, things have a way of evening themselves out. And that's what's going on right now. This Phillies roster is flawed. There was never a 114-win team. That's the pace they were on. They're more likely in the range of where they've been in the past. An 89 to 94 win team, somewhere in there. You know, Joe Girardi won a World Series with the Yankees. But when he came here, all of a sudden he sucked. You can't win a World Series and also suck. You can't be both. It tells you how important the players are. You know, Gabe Kapler was despised here. He went to San Francisco. He won 107 games and was the National League Manager of the Year in 2021. You can't suck and be the Manager of the Year. The players are a big part of it. So just keep in mind, you don't win a World Series because of your manager's decisions. You win because of the talent on the roster and the culture the manager sets. And that's why the Phillies have had so much success under Thompson in his tenure. Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. We start there today. Like to get your take on that. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Talking about setting the culture. We've talked so much about Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. Are people overlooking what a bigger issue could be for the Eagles? I know I'm not. I've been talking about this a lot. But a former NFL All-Pro discussed it. Coming up next, you'll hear that on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.
It's
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
On the defensive side of the ball, 2 years ago, where they had 70 sacks, but at the same time, Fletcher wasn't hurt. Fletcher was going. Like, he was in the mix. He was still had a little juice left. And then last year, he's kind of, and everything dropped. So when you got a guy that's in the core of what you do, and he's there, it makes everything go. Guys look to him, not just to make plays, but for energy. They look to him for advice, everything.
Former Tampa Bay Buccaneer defensive tackle Gerald McCoy on the Green Light podcast talking about the loss of Fletcher Cox and what it will mean. First-team All-Pro player, second-team All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler. This is a guy who's played at a really high level and knows exactly what the Eagles are losing. And some people talking about that, the Sirianni Hurts stuff, those guys are driving around in Dom's golf cart the other day. I think they're fine. But McCoy has concerns about the defense without Fletcher Cox. He also has concerns about the Eagles' offense without Jason Kelce.
Losing a Jason Kelce or a Fletcher Cox, people don't understand, man. When you lose your core leaders, like losing your center, who's really like the mind and the brains behind like really making everything go on offense, that's very tough to replace. Travis Frederick for the Cowboys O-line. When he left, that dominant O-line play that everybody was so used to, it started to fade a little bit because that centerpiece was missing.
So the Kelce Fletcher Cox departions of this team, I talked about it the whole offseason. That, to me, is maybe the biggest storyline for Philadelphia. It's how do you replace Fletcher Cox? How do you replace Jason Kelce? I think we're all taking for granted that those two spots are just going to be two guys no longer here and everything's going to be hunky-dory the way that it was in the past. Fletcher Cox was still pretty damn good last year. He might not have been, prime years Fletcher. Jason Kelce still pretty good last year. And now you got Cam Jurgens. All right, show me something, young man. Jalen Carter. I think Jalen Carter is good, but those two guys there, those two guys not being here, I think that should be talked about way more than the relationship between Hurts and Sirianni, which I think is just manufactured nonsense.
So why don't we talk about it more?
Not sexy. Coach-quarterback relationship is top of the list.
Well, do you win championships because you're sexy or because you execute?
You win championships for multitudes of reasons. One of them is being cohesive, same page, correct, all that. But part of that is having good leaders and having guys that the young players can turn to. Now, you might say, well, what happened last year? Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce, they were both here. So how did the team fall apart? It's funny. I asked Fletcher Cox that question at the Super Bowl. What happened? What happened to this team? And he essentially didn't have an answer for me, right? I mean, his answer was as dumbfounded as the question is coming out of my mouth. Hey, man, why did you lose 6 out of 7 games down the stretch? And Fletcher Cox, he almost couldn't believe that it happened and that he was a part of it. It was one of those things where I think he's still searching for answers to that question. I think he's still trying to figure out what happened as he sits here in a retired state. And I don't know that anybody has the answer to that question. So it's a fair question to ask. Those two guys were here last year, and yet the team fell apart. So one of the things that you look at and say, well, what happened last year? At least Brandon Graham has some answer that I think the Eagles at least addressed.
I didn't think we had all the right coaches in the proper spots that could help us, whatever Desai's message was, because it was just a bunch of miscommunication. That's all. That's what I would just say. It was just miscommunication that I know Howie regretted after the season. That's a strong statement. I think it should have got more play. It's one of those things where it just kind of got slipped under the rug. Where did he say that?
That was on Carlin versus Joe on ESPN Radio.
It's amazing to me that he said that on national radio and it just kind of got swept under the rugs. In fact, that to me is the theme of the offseason. When Fletcher Cox gets asked and he says, I still go home and I can't even understand what happened. And Brandon Graham basically says, no, we know what happened. Miscommunication. And Howie saw it and knew it. And now look what we have. We have 2 new coordinators in here. I think it's pretty clear what the Eagles thought happened.
Yeah, the Eagles told you what happened. The problem is that the coaching staff that was in place was not good enough, and it caused more problems than anything else. And, you could argue that they were 10-1 in spite of who Sean Desai and Brian Johnson.
That's the weirdest
were.
thing, though. How do you go 10-1 in this league with the schedule that they had and do it in spite of somebody? I mean, that's almost impossible to do. I mean, seriously, the Eagles last year were 10-1, and it wasn't like they had wins against like the 9 worst teams in the league. At that point, to get to 10-1, they had beaten Dallas and Kansas City and Buffalo. I mean, Kansas City won the Super Bowl, for God's sakes. Buffalo was in the playoffs. Dallas, a playoff team. How did you do that? How?
Lane Johnson said it that he felt that the last season was a lot of missed opportunities, though.
What we were doing collectively obviously wasn't making a whole lot of sense, and really was a tale of two teams. But even when we did have the record of 10-1, a lot of these games were very tight games and could have gone either way. You can look back at some of those games and feel like you left, 2 scores, 3 scores on the board, and that's kind of how it felt all season.
Yeah, but the part that he says there, you can go back and see how we won those games. Many times you left saying the good teams find ways to win, and they beat Tampa Bay, a playoff team. They beat the Rams, a playoff team. They beat Miami, a playoff team. They beat Dallas, a playoff team. They beat Kansas City, the world champions. On the road, by the way. They went to L.A. and beat them. They went to Tampa and beat them. They went to Kansas City and beat them, and then found a way to beat Buffalo. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their wins in that stretch came against playoff teams, one of which won the Super Bowl on the road. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense, but maybe at the end of the day, we have all misinterpreted some of this.
In which capacity?
In the capacity that, you mentioned earlier how it's not sexy to talk about leadership, but you know what? It's not sexy to blame the coordinators either. Everyone wants to blame Nick Sirianni, right? He's the leader. He's the head coach, right? But at the end of the day, maybe there were just elements that happened last year that were completely out of the control of Sirianni and Jalen Hurts.
Well, that's what they're banking on, obviously. And if you play the Brandon Graham bite one more time, you hear what he says. He mentions Howie Roseman, and he said Roseman understands it and feels like he fixed it.
I didn't think we had all the right coaches in the proper spots that could help us, whatever Desai's message was, because it was just a bunch of miscommunication. That's all. That's what I would just say. It was just miscommunication that I know Howie regretted after the season.
Howie regretted after the season. And Brandon Graham, Jason Kelce, those guys, they admire Howie Roseman so much. Kelce has said it many times on record about Roseman. Brandon Graham there said Howie regretted it. They know the players, the leaders of that team, Kelce and Brandon Graham, that those guys know that Howie Roseman, they trust him. They also trust that Roseman knows what the problem was and that he identified it and made the changes that were necessary.
So then back to the original question, which is not sexy. What is this team going to look like without Kelce and Fletcher Cox?
Well, we don't have that answer yet, obviously. We know it's going to be Cam Jurgens, and can he pick up the slack and kind of keep it moving forward, and will it be a seamless transition at center? That's a tough spot to just seamlessly go from one guy to the other.
You heard Gerald McCoy mention when the Cowboys lost Travis Frederick and how their offensive line play immediately started going down. I would like to think the Eagles are in a better position now with who they have than the Cowboys were when Frederick left.
Well, I think they think so, but we'll never know until the pads go on in September 6th when we see Jurgens at center. I don't know that he's ever played center in an NFL game. I don't remember him getting any snaps there in any capacity.
I know he played a couple
preseason games. I'm talking about in a live game.
He hasn't played in an NFL regular season game.
Yeah. The other side I feel better about, obviously. And it's not that I think Jurgens can't do it or will stink. I think Jurgens will probably be fine. It's just the other part. It's in addition to the level of play. It's the intangibles.
Right.
The intangibles are stuff that nobody can account for. And the intangibles that Jason Kelce brought to this team for 12 seasons, that's going to be hard to duplicate. whether he can play at a better level or not than Kelce did.
Well, also don't forget, Kelce was not a Hall of Famer day one. There was a few years where people wanted to run him out of town, remember? After the Bengals and Ravens games and after the Lions debacle on Thanksgiving. Like, there were people who wanted to get rid of him. And then it was basically from 2017, the last year, that he became this future Hall of Famer. He wasn't that day one. So it's going to be hard to expect Cam Jurgens to replicate Kelce, even when Kelce wasn't Kelce first year.
It's 2:45 on a Tuesday. Sanchez and Kershaw tonight. They're going for the Phillies and the Dodgers. It's game 2 of the series. Phillies thoughts, 609-403-0973 on the text board. Send us a text, 609-403-0973. We'll read and react to some of your text messages coming up. Plus, Frank Close answers your Phillies baseball questions in 14 minutes from now on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SBLive.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
2:51 Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN. Mike Gill with you here. So Charles Barkley apparently is changing his tune. Not on Joel Embiid.
No, not on Embiid.
So Barkley had said before that he was retiring. This was it for him.
Yep.
So for those of you who are following this whole NBA, Warner Brothers Discovery, which is TNT, this is the last year for basketball games on TNT with the Inside the NBA crew, Shaq, Kenny, Ernie, and Barkley. Barkley has said this is going to be it for him.
Right.
Well, today he has changed his tune and said he will not retire. In fact, he's going to stay with TNT now.
Which is interesting because if they don't have the NBA, it's just hanging around for the college basketball. Is that what he's going to do?
I don't know. I mean, there's been some thoughts, and now I've heard some stuff that like they just might use them in a variety of roles, like maybe
he does
even
love
like
hockey.
Well, like maybe like a comedy or some TV show, or use him
Late
in
Night with Chuck,
something to that effect. Yes, but he is. So the question I really have with Barkley is like everybody loves Barkley. Barkley is a very popular NBA voice and just overall voice. But you can't take anything he says seriously. This happens all the time with him. He's the boy that cries wolf now.
Well, the joke is on Inside the NBA that if he makes a prediction in a series, you go the other way. Like, that's always been the joke. That he's the Greenie's kiss of death.
Yeah, just like, come on, Barkley. Like, why would you say, I'm retiring, I'm done, I want to turn it over to
Steve Smith?
No, it was Jamal Crawford.
No, but Steve Smith was on the set that day too. He was pointing to both of them.
Well, come on. And then he reverses course not even a month later. They put out a press release and everything.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting text from Glenn in Absecon. He says, when a team is 10-1, there's no reason to make a change in the coaching staff. They were part of the staff while you were 10-1. Bringing Patricia was a genius move. Whoever made that decision needs to be held accountable. Should have just left the coaching staff alone, and the players just needed to be better. I do agree that Patricia thing, I had said, if you told me that you were firing Nick Sirianni and that was the reason, I do think that was a fireable offense. So I can get on board with that.
But I will say that it's because they didn't fire him for that reason makes you wonder, was it really Sirianni's decision?
Good point. I will say, teams do make changes to their coaching staff in season, even when things are good. Look at Buffalo last year, and it brought them a division title. So Glenn and Absecon, I have to disagree with you there. Buffalo changed their offensive coordinator and ended up winning the division because of it.
I'll say the Ravens won the Super Bowl years ago by doing that.
They did. All right, coming up on the other side, Phillies in L.A., they lose again. Your questions are answered by Frank Close on the other side. Don't go away. More Sports Bash coming up.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Three o'clock, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. And, of course, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. Frank Close covers the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. His Phillies mailbag answers your Phillies questions, and we've got a couple of them that we want to dive into. But kind of a quintessential Aaron Nola game last night, Frank. You know, it's a game where he is pitching well, the Phillies get a lead, and then he gives up 4, and then he settles back in, and the team just offensively just can't get it done. That is like every Aaron Nola game that I feel like I've seen over his career here happens more times than any other game. The game we saw last night from Nola, that's the quintessential Nola game.
Yeah, I think it feels that way, Mike, and I think that the fans that, you know, if you think back to when he was a free agent, ultimately re-signed with the Phillies, I feel like the fans that know him very, very, very well know that games like this happen with Aaron Nola. And it's a real shame because I feel like the Phillies had a real shot to be in this game yesterday. I mean, even though it was a loss, it felt like they were in it mostly until the end. I know that last Ohtani home run kind of seemed to kick it out of reach, but yeah, that seemed to be the one thing that just this one inning where he seemed to have just sort of lost it and really struggled to find it again, defined the day.
Frank, obviously the offense still kind of struggling. It looked like it was coming around the other day. They scored a couple of runs late and then 3 strikeouts for Harper last night, another dud for Turner. Is there anything that you think they could do to shake it up?
It's really, really hard to say. I mean, these are big money accomplished players. I think the big question people had after yesterday was, well, should someone have pinch hit for Garrett Stubbs? And I don't think there was an obvious person to do it. I mean, I guess you could go Real Muto, but he hasn't been hitting well, and he hasn't gotten his timing back since he came off the injured list. If you remember a few weeks ago, or whenever he came off the, how long has it been now? It feels like a while. But when he came off the IL, I said you got to wonder about his timing because he didn't have a minor league rehab assignment since that's not a thing anymore. And neither did Turner or Harper, right? You know, it seems like that's not in the conversation anymore. So they come up into the major leagues, they're thrown right into the fire, and they don't really have a chance to get their timing down. And that's just something that's going to have to happen naturally by getting a lot of at bats. And to me, that's what they're really missing right now.
Yeah, I did get a lot of people texting earlier today, even before I jumped on the air about, I want to hear you defend him not hitting for Stubbs in the 9th, and you really can't, really. I mean, yeah, do I want to see Stubbs hit in the 9th inning? Of course not. But my other thought was, well, who were you going to call on to hit in that spot? And I know the obvious answer is Real Muto. Well, Real Muto, right-handed bat against a right-handed pitcher. I guess they figure, and plus you don't like to hit the backup catcher. Now, if he gets out, the game's over. But if they end up, all that stuff. But yeah, I would have hit first. I would have certainly not been opposed for hitting for Stubbs in that spot. Which comes the other thing is, Real Muto is sitting a lot. It seems like he's kind of getting more time off since the injury. Do you think about Marchand as a possibility the rest of the summer?
Well, I think you'll see him in a few weeks. When rosters expand, they can definitely bring him up. But I guess the problem right now is if you bring him up now, you're short a bench bat. I mean, I know Weston Wilson doesn't play a whole heck of a lot. He's not giving them a whole heck of a lot, honestly, either. But you really want Marchand then to end up pinch hitting in spots that Wilson would, but then that screws up your defense. So I think you just kind of need to wait this out until you get to the end of the month and you add that extra roster spot for a position player, and I'm sure one extra pitcher. But it's just it's really tough. Last week when we chatted, I really thought the Phillies might try to add a bench bat. I think that is something they really need, and the opportunity is not going to be there to make a trade. So you can make the argument, Frank, that they need it more than just a bench bat. I talked about this in the first hour. If your first 4 are really struggling the way they are, 5 through 9, there's not a lot of guys in that lineup that, Marsh is hitting under 250, 240 for Castellanos, 241 for Stott. If you're hitting Marsh, if that's what you are deciding to do, hit him in the 5 hole, 5 through 9 is a real tough look. Watch some nights. Yeah, the hard part there is you really thought Bryson Stott was ready to hit in the 5th spot or somewhere in that vicinity of their lineup, and he just has not been the same this year. I don't know whether it be a sophomore slump or whatnot, but he was somebody I thought would be the high contact bat like Alec Bohm. And hopefully, for the Phillies' sake, that he'll just have this sophomore slump like Bohm had and get back to making contact next year. But yeah, it does put them in a tough spot. I mean, but it's a marathon season. I mean, baseball is a really long season, and you're going to have your ups and downs, and you got to hope they'll get some of these downs out of the way because, when Turner and Harper are hitting, man, this lineup, watch out.
Yeah, obviously when you get that, but when they're not hitting, the problem that's been their problem, right, Frank? And when they have, that part of the lineup carried them past the Cardinals. That part of their lineup carried them past the Braves. That part of their lineup carried them past the Marlins. That part of the lineup carried them past San Diego. It's also that part of the lineup that lost them against Houston and Arizona.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. So, and if you look at, as we were saying, at the trade deadline, some of those potential opponents are gunning for those types of players with some of the relief trades that they made leading up to last week. So yeah, that is a bit of concern. You need premium Harper, you need premium Turner, and basically they're paying them premium money. So you got to expect that it's going to come back. I mean, I don't know that they're on the other side or the downside of their careers at this point, but you just got to think it's going to come back. I think it got into Harper's head some, not using batting gloves, using Nick Castellanos' bat. I mean, once it was in his head, it seemed like he needed to get those thoughts out of his head, and he'll be his old self. But you saw him make some good contact the last couple days. Hopefully you'll see Harper get back on track, but Turner too. I mean, they're both too good of players to do this at an extended time, and it's just unfortunate that the timing is that it's happening at the same time. And beyond that, when the Phillies are pretty thin on pitching right now. I mean, with that, the Colby Allard / bullpen game every fifth day, you're seeing the effects of a tired pitching staff. Jeff Hoffman staying in to give up 4 runs. Well, Jeff Hoffman rarely does that, but 2, if Jeff Hoffman's in a normal game where a starter pitches deep into the game, you pull him out a lot sooner than you did, rather than hoping to get through because you needed to get through several innings. So it's all kind of coming together at the same time, and it's got to be frustrating.
No doubt about it. And, you brought up something that night. We had people texting in yesterday about them pulling Allard and putting Hoffman in. I said, oh, my God. Now we're at the point where we would rather see Colby Allard stay in the game than turning it over to Jeff Hoffman. I mean, I didn't have a big problem turning it over to Hoffman in that spot. If you tell me, I would imagine the Phillies at the beginning of the day, Dombrowski and Sam Fold sat down with Rob Thompson and said, look, Kerkering, Allard, if we can get 4, then we have the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th for Hoffman, Strahm, Alvarado, and Estevez. That's a perfect blueprint for us. So I can't get on board with saying why not keep Allard out there another inning.
Yeah, this is the problem that other teams have had this year, not the Phillies. Why? Because their starters went deep. When if you're planning on essentially 5 innings from your bullpen in any given night, that's going to stress them out. That's going to strain them. That takes away the possibility of Hoffman struggling a little bit. Okay, go get Kerkering. Oh, Hoffman's struggling. Or there's lefty coming up. All right, put Strahm in now. You lost that opportunity, and that's what the pitching staff that goes deep into games really does for you. And you're really showing. Yeah, Colby Allard was. He was just kind of thrown in there hoping to get through a few innings. I mean, that's basically what they were hoping to get out of him. And, the idea of Kerkering pitching first. Okay, well, he'll face, a Rosarina and a couple of the tough righties early. And then that way Allard doesn't have to face them more than once, So, I mean, they really tried to piece this together and really just underscores how badly you need to have your starters back.
All right, a couple questions. Let's get into the mailbag here. Michael has a question, kind of big picture here. Is there anybody at the minor league level, and I would think that there's not a whole heck of a lot here, that could help now? Like that can be a guy who comes up and helps this roster at this stage of the season?
Yeah, he mentions Max Laser by name, and I think you're at the point now, the trade deadline has passed. Your 40-man roster is what it is. The Phillies are going to have to dig into that AAA depth at some point if they have any more injuries. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do. You're beyond the point where you can make the trade. You can't make the waiver trades. You remember in past years, some of the big trades the Phillies made en route to the playoffs were, or at least when they got close, the acquisition of Jamie Moyer was in August after the deadline deal. Matt Stairs in August after the deadline deal. Scott Air, right? I could go on with several other names that have really helped the Phillies out down the stretch. Can't do that anymore. So you're going to have to dig into some of that AAA depth, pitching or whatnot. And let's be honest, if you look at the 40-man roster, Michael Mercado's down there. He's working out of the bullpen so that he can perhaps be a bullpen piece for the Phillies someday if they want to go get him again. But and then you've got the Michael Rooker, who's who probably never heard of him. He was on the Phillies roster for 2 days before they made their first trade there. So there's really not a whole lot on the 40-man in terms of relief. So maybe you call on somebody like a Laser, who was a minor league free agent in the offseason and pitching pretty well at AAA, just because you have nowhere else to turn. Now, you can make a trade. The Phillies did this a couple years ago when they brought in Nick Vincent, I believe it was, who was not on the 40-man roster. I don't even remember what team they got him from, but he was somebody not on a team's 40-man roster. They brought him into the organization for depth. You can make little trades like that. I'm sure Dave Dombrowski's looking around to see who's on the edge of other rosters that might be able to help the Phillies. But there's really not a lot out there right now. What you have is what you have. And so some of those names at AAA, you might need them. Hopefully you don't. I mean, the Phillies are already pretty thin. Certainly they're still without Taijuan Walker, although he's supposed to rehab tonight, weather permitting. Spencer Turnbull still probably a few weeks away. They might have to turn to some of that further help. I mean, and let's be honest, Mike, talked about the Colby Allard starts or not starts, whatever they are. They already dug pretty deep into their depth to get to this point as it is.
Yeah. What about last year out of nowhere, they called up Johan Rojas. That was kind of a surprise. Is that guy in the system somewhere?
I don't really think so. I mean, I went to a Reading game a few weeks ago and it was right before Crawford had got promoted from Jersey Shore. They had no prospects on that team. I mean, it was really a shame, but I thought, okay, I'll go see what's on the farm. And before I got there, I realized, they don't really have anything stashed at AA that they could call upon. So no, I don't think there's somebody whose tools, at least when you brought up a Rojas, you didn't care if he hit a lick. You wanted him to catch the ball, field well, maybe use his speed. But he was kind of buried on their depth chart when that happened, and really was the defense that they really needed last year. But I don't see anybody like that could surprise you. I mean, Crawford's their best prospect at AA, and he just got there. So I don't know that you want to go that route.
Right. So, last year, by the way, they called up Johan Rojas and he hit over 300, so he came up here and handled himself, with the bat and gave them a decision to keep him here. I don't think the intention was ever to keep him here.
Yeah. And by the way, one name I didn't mention, in the minor leagues was Mick Abel. He's been actually taken off the AAA roster and sent down to Clearwater on the development list to go work on some things. So they kind of put a pause on the Mick Abel AAA situation. So I don't know if he's going to be around to help you either.
What happened to McGarry?
Still kind of floundering at AAA. I don't think he ever really got himself together there this year. So, he was somebody we thought that would be a potential relief arm for the Phillies this year. But he's just kind of floundered in the minor leagues this year. I mean, he hasn't been terrible, but he's not what you thought that he might be for the Phillies just yet. So you might have to see what he does come spring training next year before you really see if he's somebody that can help you.
Unbelievable. That's one of those reasons why sometimes you got to pull the trigger on prospects, right? I mean, hey, McGarry and Abel were two names we've heard for 3 years now, and here they are, both kind of in anonymity.
And I will say this too. I mean, McGarry was injured for a while. He's only been kind of active another maybe 2-3 weeks at this point. So if he starts pulling it together and you're stuck come September, I mean, maybe, but it seems like this is not going to be the year that he's going to help you. But I'm sure he'll be in spring training, and if he's healthy, maybe he can get that together this year.
All right. William asked a question. You didn't bring his name up, but what about Scott Kingery?
It's a real shame. So the story with him was his big 6-year, $24 million deal ended after last year. And next thing you know, his minor league years still remained and he's still a Philly. Like I thought for sure the Phillies would have said, okay, Scott, we really appreciate your effort. We're going to cut you loose and then you can go see if you can find yourself somewhere else. They hung on to him. And I don't totally understand why they hung on to him if they weren't going to use him. But he's shown some power this year at AAA. He's got a decent OPS, 22 home runs, about 11 doubles, a few triples. So he's actually been giving them some production and a little bit of power at AAA. Now, will that translate to the major leagues? I think if they thought it would, they might have called him up by now. But really, he's still. One thing that he does have going for him is he's played mostly shortstop, can play some second base, made one appearance in center field. But honestly, talking about not having a lot of depth beyond the major league roster, when you go to AAA, you're talking maybe David Dahl or Scott Kingery, both of them not on the 40-man roster. Matt Kroon could get a look. He's someone the Phillies drafted maybe 6 years ago, having an okay season at AAA, pretty decent season. But it makes me wonder why the Phillies continue to hang on Scott Kingery if they're not going to call him up. Now, could be a situation where if you have another injury to a right-handed bat and you really want another right-handed bat, you might give him a shot. But I don't know that they think at the moment that he would give them something Weston Wilson doesn't. Wilson replacing Whit Merrifield, marginal upgrade so far. It is an upgrade, not a huge upgrade, but. I would be surprised if they just decided to move from Wilson to Kingery. But, an injury, maybe they have to dig into AAA for Scott Kingery. But I just feel like he's such an afterthought at this point that he's not going to help the Phillies. In fact, talking about those trades you can make with players not on a 40-man roster, if I'm another team and I'm looking around the non-40-man roster players as someone who potentially could help my roster, maybe I'd trade for him and just see if he can be helpful. But because really that's what you're limited to right now.
Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com. We'll finish off with a pitching question, which comes in from Kevin, who wants to know what's the plan with the pitching. I mean, we've seen Sanchez tonight. Suarez is hurt. Wheeler obviously will be at the top of the rotation. We imagine Nola's in there. Do we anticipate, what happens with Sanchez? Do they use him in relief? Do they use him do they just go to 4-star? How does that all work out in your mind?
So I think at this point you're going to need all 4 starters when you go to the playoffs. It's the way that the schedule is. You start with the wild card. If you're the Phillies, you hopefully don't have to pitch in the wild card. But the wild card, 3 games max, runs right into the division series. You need all 4 starters. From there to the championship series, the league championship series, you probably need all 4 starters. It depends when you finish, but you're not always going to be able to start with Zach Wheeler every single time if the previous series doesn't end at a time where maybe he had just pitched, so you can't pitch him again. So you really need all 4. In fact, one thing that they're doing differently this year, which is kind of interesting, that if both league championship series are done by October 19th, they're going to move the start of the World Series up. There's not going to be any big gap waiting for the World Series to happen. Instead of Friday the 25th, it's going to start on Tuesday the 22nd. So that's another reason why you're going to need your starters around and available. So you're really going to need 4 this year, the way it plays out. There's not really more than one off day in between, just one moving day in those big series. So in order to keep normal rest for the players, you're going to need 4 starters. And, at this point, the Phillies really should hope that they're healthy.
All right, Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com. His Phillies mailbag is up every Tuesday, and you can hear him right here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Frank, it was good to catch up with you on Saturday. I saw him. He stopped over at our fundraiser down there at Myers Lighthouse. Your first time there?
First time.
Yes, it was good to see you, man. Stopped out, had a nice cold brew, and hung out with the team for a little while. We just beat the weather there. It started pouring right as that fundraiser ended on Saturday night. But Frank answers all your questions over at 97.3ESPN.com. And the Phillies take on the Dodgers tonight. Clayton Kershaw, a lefty, going up against Christopher Sanchez. So we'll keep our eye for the Phillies lineup, which should be out probably around 6:30 tonight. All right, Frank, we'll talk to you next week, pal.
A lot of Rays tonight. We'll see.
Most likely.
Go, Mike.
Most likely. There's Frank, everybody. And, of course, he's back next week here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN with his Phillies mailbag. Your text messages are coming in at 609-403-0973. You can text the text board throughout the show. We'll read and react to them coming up. Also, coming up on the other side, one thing we've been talking about the Phillies a lot today. They're going to make the playoffs. But how about 7 teams that made the playoffs last year? Which ones could miss the playoffs this year? Which teams that made the NFL playoffs last year do you guys think will miss the playoffs this year? See what CBS Sports thinks. That's next. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. This hour of the show, it's brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907. We're online at broadlees.net. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash.
You're listening to the Sports with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
3:28 this hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing and Heating. I'm Mike Gill. It's the Sports Bash. Egg Harbor Township's National Night Out is still on for tonight. It's from 6 to 9 at Veterans Memorial Park. Plenty of games, vendors, food trucks, fireworks at the end. I know some people, the National Night Outs are being kind of postponed or canceled altogether. But EHT's is on. So stop out 6 to 9, Veterans Memorial Park for tonight's National Night Out. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Here's a question for you, Josh. Would you have done this? So today I went to get a sandwich for lunch.
Okay.
I got a sandwich, a drink, and a little fruit salad.
All right.
All right. The lady says to me, $8.99. What's your reaction?
Does a sandwich usually cost $5 or $6?
I think you know the answer to this question.
Well, I don't know where you went, so that's why I'm asking.
I mean, any deli in America now, you can't get a sandwich for under $10.
That's true.
So I got a drink, fruit salad, and a sandwich. She said $8.99.
I would have been like, cool.
Wow. You would have taken the deal.
I would have seized that deal.
You know what's funny? The other night, seize the deal, by the way, this week is Yuri's Restaurant in Wildwood, $50 gift certificate, $25. I was out to dinner, and I heard 2 people sitting on a bench talking about seize the deal.
Did you really?
I start cracking up. She's like, you get a $50 gift certificate for $25.
She was so excited.
She was excited. You know what I did? The lady said to me, $8.99. And I said, that can't be right. You're charging me. You're not charging me enough. You know what my bill ended up being? $17.99.
Oh.
Yeah. The sandwich was like $8.99. The woman who at the deli put the sticker on the sandwich, she wrote 89 cents instead of $8.99.
Oh.
So the lady said to me,
well, hold on. The sandwich was $8.99.
Mm-hmm. The fruit salad was probably $4 or $5.
See, I got a problem with that.
I mean, everything's overpriced.
I know that, but I mean, a fruit salad is $5. Good grief. I could buy fruit and make a fruit salad for myself.
$3.04 for the fruit salad.
Okay, so 9 plus 3 is 12. So how do we get? So the soda was $5.
The drink is probably $2.50.
Okay, so I'm at $14.50. So
a little tax on there.
I think you got hosed on the back end here somewhere.
So she said $8.99, and maybe it was $15.99. I don't remember, but she said $8.99, and I told her that's not enough. I knew as soon as she said $8.99, I looked down, because of course you don't get a freaking bag. So I looked down, I got all this stuff on the counter, and I'm like, well, hold on a second here. I got a drink, I got a fruit salad, I got a sandwich. $8.99? There's no way this is $8.99. This is the greatest place I could find if you're telling me it's $8.99. So I said, ma'am, you didn't charge me enough. So she looked at me and she's like, oh my God, you're right. So then she came back. She said, I'm sorry. It's whatever. I don't remember what it was, $15.99, $14.99, whatever it was. But my question was, if the lady said $8.99, would you have accepted that answer or would you have corrected her? And I think we have what kind of person you are.
I wouldn't have thought it would be that expensive. So now again, I don't know which place you went to. We want to name them on the radio, but it sounds a little expensive.
It's no more expensive than like any other place generally. Like anytime you go out to lunch today, if you're getting it for under $20, you're kind of lucky. And I got a sandwich, the fruit salad, and the drink.
That's true.
So, I mean, I'm not, whatever.
You got a full course meal.
Put it this way. I'm not barking enough that I walked out by stiffing them. Like she said $8.99 and I said, you didn't charge me enough.
Got it.
And she went to go check. Well, it was obvious because I looked at the sandwich and on the sticker it said 89 cents.
Well, what we found out today is Mike Gill is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and Josh Hennig is not.
Yes. I feel so. I'm waiting for the good karma to spin my way.
You might be waiting a while.
Yeah, exactly. But that's my hope now.
The way this day is going, you might be waiting a while.
My hope now is that something spins my way for the betterment.
Now all I got is Lenny Kravitz. Are you going to go my way? Stuck in my head now. If you said that.
Well, I don't know. How many people in the listening audience would have also done the same thing. Now, I told my girlfriend, I said I did my good deed for the day. I'm at this place, which is kind of funny. I haven't been to this place in a while. I don't know what made me go there. I run into a guy who I haven't seen in a long time, and I saw his brother this weekend, and I had no idea he had a twin brother.
Really?
So I said hello to the twin brother, and he barely acknowledged me. And I was like, what a jerk. I didn't know he had a twin brother.
Wow.
So I saw the guy who's the twin randomly, and I said, yo, I saw your brother this week. He said, was he a bleep? I said, yes, he was. Yes, he said, well, he didn't know, now I know why. So it was this whole scene in this place is kind of interesting, like I hadn't been in here. So I said to my girlfriend, I did my good deed for the day. I go to the register. The lady says $8.99 for my lunch. And I said, wait, you're not charging me enough.
And what'd your girlfriend say?
She said their loss is your gain. But I said, no, I told the lady that I didn't.
Your girlfriend would have seized the deal like I would
have. Biz from Absecon says, I'm with Josh. I'm taking the deal. I have a feeling most people are going to take the deal. Something's wrong with me. Right?
Or maybe something's wrong with all of us.
Yeah. Well, I could go with that answer too. But I think generally most people, if the lady said $8.99, they're taking the $8.99 deal. Because in the end, whatever I paid is preposterous for the lunch. I'm just
a sandwich, a fruit salad, and a drink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which teams could miss the NFL playoffs this year after making it last year? Do you think there are teams that definitely made the playoffs last year that won't be in the playoff field this year?
Yes.
Who you got?
The Bills.
So many people are high on the Bills.
I'm not.
I'm not that high on the Bills either. Now, I wasn't high on the Bills last year. I said as a Super Bowl contender. I didn't say they weren't going to be a playoff team. I said I didn't think they were a Super Bowl contender.
Well, you had said multiple times that their window had closed on a Super Bowl.
Yes, and I think it has. Now, I think they tried to reopen it by trading the Diggs and letting Gabe Davis go and a lot of the moves they made. They tried to get younger around Allen. Like on the fly, I think they're trying to do
on
that.
the fly, yeah.
So last year, Buffalo made it, Miami made it. Are they both in?
I think Miami's in, Buffalo's out.
Baltimore made it, Cleveland made it, Pittsburgh made it.
I think Baltimore and Cleveland are in. I think Pittsburgh is out for Cincinnati.
Houston made it.
Houston's in.
Kansas City made it.
Kansas City's in.
All right, so then you need two new teams in. You have Buffalo out, and you have Pittsburgh out.
Let's go with Jacksonville getting a wild card.
Jacksonville and?
The other team is tough because you look around the conference, and if I'm saying the Steelers are out, because you can't have 4 teams for the same division in the playoff. That'd be insane. Even I can do that math. So I guess the other team is
Benny and the Jets.
Yeah, the Jets. Yep. Good. That's a good call by you.
That's the team for me. Buffalo, Al, you're saying Miami in. Jets, now you're going with Jets in over Buffalo. So
Right.
Buffalo finishes third in the East.
I'm making that exchange.
Okay. And then everything else stays the same.
I went to the store, I made the exchange, I got the $8.99 deal for it.
All right. In the National Football Conference, Dallas was in, Philadelphia was in.
I think both of those teams still are in.
Detroit and Green Bay were in.
I think they're both in.
Tampa Bay.
I think Tampa's in.
San Francisco and the Rams.
I think San Francisco is in. I think the Rams are out.
Okay, so only one change. That sounds like it's not going to happen. And if it's one, who is it?
If I take the Rams out, I am going to say that, see, I'm trying to decipher between Chicago or Washington. Because I think both of those teams have interesting teams. So it's like, which of those two do I have more faith in? You know, I like Washington's coaching staff better than Chicago, but I like Chicago's skill players more than Washington.
So over the past 3 seasons, by the way, an average of 6.7 new teams make the playoffs each year.
Interesting.
Yep. So you're talking about almost 3 on each side.
So realistically, we found 2 in the AFC. Well, I found 2 in the AFC. So I did find 1 in the NFC. But you're saying that probably should get closer to 2.
Well, this article says that 7 teams could miss the cut. Who are those 7? Here's the ones that he listed.
Got it. Go.
Cleveland.
See, I disagree with Cleveland strongly. I really do. I'll argue this until they prove me wrong. That team went to the postseason with 12 injured starters last year.
Yeah, his reasoning is Deshaun Watson. I mean, you can't really argue much with that. He hasn't been very good.
They went to the playoffs without him. Who cares?
Well, if he stinks, they weren't because Flacco was pretty good.
Flacco was good. I wouldn't act like he was the second coming of anything.
Pittsburgh is another one.
Pittsburgh I agree with because I have to believe that when you look at Cincinnati, if they are good to go, they're in.
Tampa Bay, which I like Atlanta more than I like Tampa.
Yeah, you've been consistent on that point. And I understand where you're coming from. You're saying, look, you put Kirk Cousins on a team that all they needed was a quarterback last year. I just think that Tampa is still a good team. And I think another year of stability with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans is going to be good.
They went with Houston.
Oh, I disagree with that strongly.
I think everybody likes Houston. Their reasoning is their schedule is brutal.
Yeah, well, their roster is better than it was last year. You added Stephon Diggs. You added Joe Mixon. You added Danielle Hunter. You added premier players to that team. You're not the Bills. You didn't subtract half the team.
He says they feel very Jacksonville-ish, who went to the playoffs, surprised people, got better on paper, and then weren't ready.
I don't see the connection, but I get where he's coming from.
Well, the year before, Jacksonville went to the AFC Championship game, went out and got Calvin Ridley, and you felt like, man, this offense is going to be even better than it was the year before, and they were not so good. Houston, by the way, their schedule is brutal. They play early on, it's kind of easy. Colts, Bears, Vikings, Jaguars, Buffalo, Patriots, Packers, Colts, Jets, Lions, Cowboys, Titans, Jaguars, down the stretch, Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens. Oof.
Yeah, well, hold on. Is the Dolphins game in Miami or Houston?
Houston.
That might help them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Miami's not so good on the road in December.
All right. The other team they have is Dallas.
See, Dallas is interesting because, let me ask you, Mike. So we know that Dallas lost 2 of the stars in the offensive line. They lost Tony Pollard. CeeDee Lamb is disgruntled. Micah Parsons is disgruntled. Dak Prescott's playing for a contract. Mike McCarthy is coaching for his job. So what is your perspective on the state of the Cowboys?
Just a lot going on, which is what he says. A lot going on, a lot of distractions. And, you know, how are they going to run the ball? Is that something they're going to be able to lean on Zeke Elliott, or is there somebody else that's in that room that's going to come out of nowhere? Their offensive line They drafted some linemen, but
They
are
did.
they going to be able to come in and play at the level they need to right away? So there's a lot of questions. To me, you know me, the last couple of years, I said Dallas is the better roster than Philadelphia, and yet they still can't figure out a way to get deeper. This year, I'm not so sure that Dallas is the better team.
Dallas
at this
is not
stage,
the better team.
At this stage.
They're not. They're
And
just
keep
not.
in mind, Mike Zimmer in, Dan Quinn out.
Also, when Washington plays Dallas this year, where Dan Quinn went, how does that impact that matchup? Does Dan Quinn have an edge on the Cowboys where previously you just assumed the Cowboys beat Washington every year?
All right, one other team or two other teams. They got the Rams.
See, the reason why I agree with the Rams is because I think the loss of Aaron Donald is huge. That team is going to have to outscore a lot of teams, and listen, it depends on who you believe. You know, you ask guys like your Dan Orlovskis and your Chris Longs and, you know, your people like that, they think Matthew Stafford's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Is Matthew Stafford good enough to carry a team?
Got a lot of weapons. I mean, their offense I like a lot. Their defense, yes, losing Donald I think is big. They did have a lot of young players on that. I remember when the Eagles played them early in the season. They had a lot, like their defensive line is smaller.
Right.
They did go out and get the two guys from Florida State, Verse and Fisk, you know, but no, you're not going to replace Aaron Donald. But I think their offense is pretty good. They did add some offensive linemen too.
They did. They added some offensive line, which was very helpful. I'm just curious, can you go through a 17-game schedule and just say, we're going to outscore everybody?
I'm wondering about this whole Ayuk thing and, you know, Purdy and the Niners. Are they, you know, I was reading something about this the other day. No team, okay? No team has gone to the Super Bowl and lost and gone back to the Super Bowl in the NFC. You know how long the last time it was?
In the NFC?
Mm-hmm. That the team went to the Super Bowl, lost, and then went back the next year. Even went back the next year.
Would it be the Cowboys in the 70s?
They won. It's the only time it's ever happened in the NFC. They lost in 70. They won in 71. This team went in the year and then lost and went back and lost again.
You know why?
It has never happened since.
You know why I remember that? Because I'm reading Sal Palantonio's book right now.
There you go.
How Football Explains America.
Good stuff.
There's a whole chapter on Tom Landry in there.
Yeah, so that team, the Dallas team, went in 70, they lost. They went back in 71 and won.
Yeah, and they had the Super Bowl. They had the Super Bowl MVP on the losing team that year.
The team I'm talking about, it's the last time a team went 1 year to the Super Bowl, lost.
That's the key.
And then made it back the next year. They also lost.
Okay, so it's a more recent team.
I wouldn't go that far. It hasn't happened in 50 years.
It's an NFC team, though.
Only in the NFC. It has happened in the AFC
Right,
side.
the Buffalo Bills.
In the NFC, no team has gone to the Super Bowl after losing the year before and made it back in 50 years. 1973, they lost. 1974, they got back. The Vikings
Fran
lost
Tarkenton.
both times.
The Purple People.
That's what the Niners are up against right now. Can they break a 50-year string of teams not being in the Super Bowl in the NFC after losing back-to-back seasons?
That's a great stat poll right there. Good job.
Thank you.
You point in your column there.
And the Niners, you know, the Trent Williams, the Ayuk.
Yep.
You know, all that stuff. Is it just lingering over the team? They return all 11 starters on offense, and I think 10 of 11 starters on defense. So,
yeah, they do have a continuity, but the question, I'm more concerned about Trent Williams than I am about Brandon Ayuk. I was talking with Rob Motti.
I don't know about this.
What's up?
I mean, I understand from the standpoint of how important Williams is, but I think people downplay the importance of what Ayuk means to that offense.
I think Kyle Shanahan.
We had this conversation last year. I remember this conversation. Yeah. Not you. Who was it that just, I was like, dude, Ayuk's a stud.
I'm not saying he's not a stud. I like Ayuk. I remember watching him at Arizona State. My thing is, I think the 49ers say, we got to the Super Bowl with you, and we got there without you. So I think in their mind, they think that they can do or with or without. To me, Trent Williams is more important because you could argue he might be the best tackle in football.
Yeah, I do think that if I could, that's a tough one. But Williams, protecting Purdy is definitely more important. But man, I think that losing Ayuk hurts them big time.
I'm curious to see if he actually does get traded in the next 24 hours or not.
Well, there's a lot of teams, not a lot, but two, Cleveland and the Patriots. And now Adam Schefter tweeted today that Pittsburgh, that's the one I saw yesterday. I did see yesterday that Pittsburgh was in, and that never materialized. But then later on at night, it said Cleveland, and they have trades, the framework. He has to pick which one he wants to go to, and so far he hasn't. If I'm him, I'm going to Cleveland, right?
Hey, listen, if I'm him, I'm going to Cleveland. You put him with Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy and Nick Chubb in the backfield. Dude, that's a team right there.
Sports Bash Live, 347. We're celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash on August 23rd at Vagabond EHT, Kitchen and Tap House, 3016 Ocean Heights Avenue, Egg Harbor Township. Stop out, have a beer with the show, some amazing food at Vagabond. It's $3.50 Bud Light during the show. Stop out. Vagabond EHT, celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill, and coming up at 4 o'clock for today's Football at 4, Adam Kaplan will kind of break down the Brandon Ayuk situation. Plus, his Kaplan Camp Tour is underway. He has seen 5 teams. He'll tell you about them coming up today. Football at 4 on the Sports Bash.
This podcast is sponsored by IQ Bar. I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Most protein bars are packed with sugar and unpronounceable ingredients. The good news? There's a better option. I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar plant protein bars to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. IQ bars are packed with 12 grams of protein, brain nutrients like magnesium and lion's mane, and 0 weird stuff. And right now, you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Try our delicious IQ Bar sampler pack with 7 plant protein bars, 4 hydration mixes, and 4 enhanced coffee sticks. Clean ingredients, amazing taste, and you'll love how you feel. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar.
Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
USA basketball in action today. They're taking on Brazil. Right now, 33-21 at the end of one. Team USA in the lead. Joel Embiid in the first quarter, 8 points, 3 rebounds, 3 of 4 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3-point range. So Joel kind of leading the way. Booker has 9. LeBron has 4. Steph Curry has 4. And a couple of guys have a couple deuces off the bench, including Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Anthony Edwards. So USA basketball 21, USA basketball 33, and Brazil 21. 33-21. USA basketball leads. Embiid having a good start to the game for Team USA. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SB Live. Follow me on the X platform. Watch the show live each and every day by using the hashtag SB Live. Coming up, Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan. We'll get some news and notes around Eagles camp. Today, it was Kellen Moore discussing what his offense looks like and how it's different from some of the things we've seen in the past. Jalen Hurts has been the star of Eagles training camp. But who else has stood out? Plus, we'll go around the training camp tour real quick. It looks like Ranger Suarez and Taiwan Walker will have news on those guys coming up in the 4 o'clock hour as well. This hour of the show was brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing Heating. Broadlee's your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call 609-390-3907 or broadlees.net.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I give my heart and soul to this franchise, as so many of us do.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
And Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And it's, of course, Adam Kaplan on a Tuesday as we take a look at all the things that the guys at the Inside the Birds podcast are talking about, including Adam Kaplan's camp tour, which has taken a couple spins here recently, taking a look at teams in L.A., the Rams, the Chargers, Vegas, the Raiders, the Giants, and the Lions, their joint practice today, which apparently had a bunch of fights. We'll take a look at the Brandon Ayuk situation. The Eagles obviously have a lot going on as well. You know, the Eagles play on Friday night. You can hear that game on 97.3 ESPN. One thing for sure that we're all going to be kind of keeping an eye on is, will the starters end up playing it all? You know, the Eagles have kind of done new things during training camp, a lot more action than in years past. They did mini camps this year, but they didn't do it in years past. So Jalen Hurts, by all accounts, really sharp. Will we see him get a couple of snaps in the preseason? A lot of talk about whether or not the Eagles should go that direction. Do you guys out there want to see the Eagles play their starters? You know, I hear a lot of people say, I got to see the Eagles starters play. You know, they didn't play at all last year. And you might say, so what? They opened up the season 10-1. They didn't play in the preseason last year. They went 10-1 to start the season. So I guess the question I would have is, do we really think that if they played in the preseason last year, that may have changed their fortunes down the stretch? I have a hard time buying that. So, look, I don't want to dismiss what the preseason may or may not do, but I have no desire to see my guy get hurt in a preseason game. So I'll pass on the preseason, but we'll see if the Eagles do plan on playing some of their players in the preseason. Like I said, last year, they got off to a 10-1 start. So the preseason or no preseason, they still got off to a great start. If they would have played preseason games last year, I don't know that they would have finished any stronger than 1-6 down the stretch. Let's bring Adam Kaplan in because it's preseason all over the place. Everybody starts this week, and some teams are in camp. They've got the joint practices going on, and Adam's checking out those. And Brandon Ayuk, he could be leaving the 49ers, and boy, that would really change the dynamics of the NFC. Let's bring in Adam Kaplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam, what's up, buddy?
Mike, good to talk to you. Yeah, so I've been on this tour. I'm taking a little break here. I'm home for a couple more days. My trip to Miami was canceled due to the hurricane, and they were hosting the Falcons for joint practice. So I'm home for a little bit in my office. But I want to talk about the Brandon Ayuk situation. It's fascinating because they've been at stalemate for months. Like they had a number in mind. They're not close. They haven't been able to find a middle ground. To avoid getting fined, he's having a hold-in. He showed up, but he's not working. He's in meetings, though, but he's not practicing. And then you've got plenty of interest. The Browns are fascinating, Mike, as we go through the teams here. We'll start with them. And when I look into this situation, it makes a little bit more sense. The Browns did not extend Mark Cooper's deal. He had no guaranteed money left in his contract, so they pretty much guaranteed all of his base salary of $20 million this season. So to save cap space, they restructured it, but they guaranteed his money, but he's not signed through the season. You might remember Elijah Moore, who they acquired a few years ago from the Jets, a former second-round pick for the Jets. He also is on the final year of his rookie deal. And then after that, you've got Jerry Jeudy, who they extended at over $17 million a season. So think about it. After the season, if they don't re-sign Cooper or Moore, you really only have Cedric Tillman. I'm old enough to remember his dad. I played for the Broncos a couple decades ago. You just don't have much. So they feel really good. And by the way, Deshaun Watson's having a decent camp. He's finally healthy off of the multiple shoulder problems and surgeries. So they're trying to get this thing moving forward here, and they want to make a big jump. So that's the Browns' angle of it. The Patriots, in my reporting in my free agent notebook at Pro Football Network, I noted that the Patriots were calling teams, like everybody. They tried to sign Calvin Ridley. It was down to the Patriots, Titans, and Jaguars, and he wound up signing with the Titans. He wanted to stay down south. But when you look at the Patriots situation, I mean, they called the Eagles for A.J. Brown. They were told he was not available, and of course, A.J. signed another extension, $32 million a year. So they're looking. They've got the rookie quarterback. They're really light at receiver. They need help, and the Steelers they're really light at receiver. Yes, George Pickens was a sort of a breakout player last season. Rowan Wilson, their third-round pick out of Michigan, he's hurt with an ankle injury. Though I'm told he'll be ready for the season. He's just not ready yet. He got hurt last week, and he was doing really well. And Van Jefferson, who's more of like an NFL fourth receiver, he's now starting opposite Pickens because they don't have anyone else. So they have interest in Ayuk. But this is not typically what the Steelers do, Mike. They typically trade away players, like they trade away Deontay Johnson, who is a veteran, who's a pretty good player, who's doing well with the Panthers in training camp. But because they're looking to upgrade that position, they remain interested. And then Washington, I'm told, that they talked to them during the draft. They really like Brandon Ayuk. So I keep an eye on them, but it's just there was a note from ESPN that Pittsburgh's back in it. They were kind of out earlier this week, so they're back in it. But it's fascinating, Mike, when a player of this stature, Brandon Ayuk, who's an absolute stud, becomes available. If you need a receiver, you got to be interested because this guy is that good. But the big holdup also is his contract. That thing, because he's going to be changing teams, he most likely will, should be around at least what A.J. Brown got at $32 million a year. Remember the A.J. Brown, the first deal that he got with Eagles, Mike, that was heavily backloaded. That was a fluffed-up deal. This new one is not. That's a legit $32 million a season.
What does it mean for San Francisco in terms of the NFC hierarchy? We were talking about this before you came on, Adam. I don't know that you're aware of this stat, but no team in the NFC has lost the Super Bowl one year and made it back the next year in 50 years. The last team to do it was the 73 Vikings, 74 Vikings. They lost both of those games. So that's what the Niners are up against right now in the NFC. What does this do if they lose Ayuk?
All right, so here this just happened. So Ricky Pearsall, their first-round pick from the University of Florida. This was a surprise when they took him, but what I was told was they just took the player with the highest-graded number on their board, and that was the guy who came up, Ricky Pearsall, who was supposed to go in the top 40. Well, Pearsall, who came off NFI last week with a hamstring injury, I'm told he was looking great. And then he hurt his shoulder today, so that's getting checked out. So Pearsall will have to start at some point. If it's not this season, which right now, if Ayuk's on the roster, he wouldn't be starting. But if this deal does not get done for Ayuk to be traded, which I find hard to believe, being that they're nowhere close to a deal, and for some reason he's back, but not extended, and then he walks, Pearsall will start next season. Mike, the way it works in the NFL, a first-round pick within his first 4 years must start or you missed. There's no like debate. That's the way it works. I'm talking to personnel people. You got to get it right. Remember now, they're paying Deebo Samuel a lot of money. There's no guaranteed money past this season they can get out of that deal. And Ayuk is up after the season. So Ricky Pearsall is going to be starting, certainly, if not this season, next season.
All right. Adam's camp tour is underway, and you got a chance to see a couple of teams. Let's go way out west to California and check in on the Raiders, who have removed the interim tag from Antonio Pierce. Our old buddy Gardner Minshew is battling, or is he battling for the quarterback job? Is it Aiden O'Connell, 5-4 last year at 9 games? That's an interesting team now with Pierce and, of course, Adams, a lot of buzz about him possibly getting moved.
Yeah, he's not getting moved. That was just him on a podcast. I could tell you for a fact, talking to Raiders, they're certainly not looking to move him to start the season. Now, if they're out of it by late October, early November, things can change. But let's not forget, Mike, they were 8-9 last season with Aiden O'Connell closing out the season as a starter. That's after Josh McDaniels, their head coach, was he was fired at the trade deadline. It was so bizarre how he was canned. And you mentioned Antonio Pierce, who Pierce and I worked together at ESPN at the same time. I'm rooting for Pierce. It's he's had this tough mentality, coming up from the California area in Compton. He's from there, and I loved talking to him at the owners' meetings about what he wants, and he wants a physical football team, but he doesn't want to be pigeonholed as a defensive guy because he doesn't want them to be like this run first, run all the time thing. Because look, you mentioned Devontae Adams and just Jacoby Myers, and remember now they drafted. You know, look, Mike, they drafted tight ends high the last two drafts. Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, who was one of the best tight ends last year to come out for the draft, didn't have a great season. And Brock Bowers was a surprise, Mike.
Yeah.
As a first-round pick. That was a surprise. So they're going to be heavy 12 personnel. Now, this practice I was at last Saturday, 3 days ago in Costa Mesa, it was at night. That, by the way, that's where the Chargers used to practice. They're now at the Bolt in El Segundo near LAX. But it was a 2-hour practice, low 70s. And, Mike, this is, in my career, I've never seen this before. I didn't time it, but I know it was at least a half an hour. They hit, Mike, live tackling for over half an hour. It's between 30 and 45 minutes. I've never seen it this long. And then after that, after practice, after they ended it, the players ran gassers, which is in uniform, jogging back and forth. It were actually a light run or a jog. I mean, you want to talk about trying to be tough? I mean, it was incredible. I had not seen a practice have live tackling for this long. And usually when you live tackle, it's 3 to 5 minutes at the most. But this is something else last Saturday night.
By the way, real quick, geez, we talk about Ayuk holding or the possible trade. Christian McCaffrey, calf strain, will not participate in the preseason. Yep. Just has a weird feel out there. I'll tell you.
It does.
A lot of weird feel.
Yep, Mike, for fantasy, this is the thing. I drafted him last year over Bijan Robinson. Turned out to be a great choice. That does worry me a little bit because he had a little calf issue late last season. So look, he's 28 now. I think great football player. Very good chance to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame someday. But McCaffrey, he just turned 28 in June. That would worry me a little bit. So, and you talk about the NFC East, the NFC, Mike. Before we get out of here, they're still the best team. Okay, there's no question about it. I'm not worried about Brock Purdy's interceptions in training camp. That doesn't really worry me. I'm thinking a lot more about the Eagles than I did probably to start training camp because I think the roster is better than I thought. There's better competition. We'll talk more when we preview Friday night's game with the Eagles and Ravens. I also visited the Ravens recently. We'll talk more about the roster. But by the way, C.J. Gardner-Johnson has a shoulder injury. I'm told it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll be back next week, but it's not too bad. But I worry about this with Gardner-Johnson. He's had a lot of shoulder, pectoral. You worry about that kind of stuff, Mike. He's a smaller guy. He's small and compact. Really good football player, but he's had injury history.
All right, real quick, you were Rams-Chargers. Rams were an NFC playoff team last year. We were talking about teams that made the playoffs last year that maybe don't go back this year. On average, 6 teams that made it one year do not go back the next. Rams-Chargers, either of those playoff teams?
Chargers, no. I know the Vegas odds makers have the over as the play 8.5. I don't see it. I know that Harbaugh's an incredible coach, wins everywhere he goes. I'm worried about that Justin Herbert plantar fascia injury. Not that he can't play, but those linger. So that would worry me a little bit. The Rams, Mike, I was with them Sunday. I had to leave right before Puka Nacua suffered a knee injury, but they're a team that overachieves every year with Sean McVay. Matthew Stafford looks great. My issue with them is on the back end. That Raheem Morris, who's now the Falcons head coach, did a great job last season as a defensive coordinator for the Rams. Now, Chris Shula is taking over as defense coordinator, first-time play caller. We got to see how that works out. They're going with veteran corners now. They're much older there. Tre'Davious White, who's had a big injury history. Darius Williams comes back. Mike, I don't have their over-under total here. I think they're around 8 or 9 wins, to be honest with you, in the NFC West.
Let's go to a lot of fights today, from what I understand. Lions, Giants, East Rutherford yesterday and today. Everybody loves the Lions. Nobody likes the Giants. Do they look comparable in the field?
You know what? I got to say this about the Giants. A lot of speed. I was with, and I counted 4. I was at the joint practice yesterday. They had another one today. Very chippy yesterday. By the way, the Lions are like that. I'm told that's the way that they practice. They're very aggressive. That's the mindset that Dan Campbell wants. But if you're a Giants fan listening, Malik Neighbors is the real deal. They're moving around and create matchups. Jalen Hyatt can run. He's just not the most physical guy. Darius Slayton is a really good defense. Wandale Robinson is their slot receiver, is explosive in a short area. I do worry, though, without Saquon Barkley. Devin Singletary is just an ordinary running back. Did have a good year for Houston, but they don't want him back. They don't even know who their number 2 back is. That would worry me a little bit. Daniel Jones is healthy. I saw him roll out and throw on the move, so he's healthy. They've addressed their offensive line. I'm not saying it's going to be great, but this is the most talent that with John Michael Schmitz now in his second year at center, they're feeling a lot better about him. John Runyon Jr., Andrew Thomas is healthy, finally, knock on wood. Jermaine Illuminor grew up as a Giants fan, who's probably going to be the right tackle. Not good for Evan Neal, who's not ready and who's been a major disappointment as a first-round pick.
All right, there you go. A little look at the Giants and the Lions, who, by the way, with the Niners kind of reeling, man, they might be the new favorite in the NFC. Do you like the Lions better, or do you like somebody else as that next team?
They've greatly addressed their secondary. They've got 3 new corners, but my problem is their pass rush. Other than Aiden Hutchinson, man, they don't have much.
Yeah,
that's the only issue is their pass rush. But man, they're absolutely loaded. Their offense didn't have a good day on Monday, I was told, but it doesn't matter. It's practice and training camp. They're really loaded, though, Mike. Great offensive line, good receiver core, good at tight end, phenomenal at running back. And for those people who thought Jared Goff was done, you would be wrong. He had a really good year last season.
Real quick, I know you got to roll. Did you peruse the Eagle depth chart that came out?
No, I never look at them. I haven't looked at one. Here's why, folks. They're not. They're unofficial and they're generally not correct. But I'll look at it. I'll look at it before we do Friday's game just to get an idea.
I'm just going to give you a quick little quirk,
right.
Okay?
All right, go ahead.
Edge, Bryce Huff. Defensive tackle, 3 of them. Davis, Carter, Williams, Edge, Sweat. There you go.
Well, actually, no, but they will start in their 5-man front. They start 3D tackles, and they have 2 overhangs who are not linebackers, as Vic Fangio, thank goodness he said that. They're not.
Well, the 2 linebackers, they're actually 4. They're all listed as first team. White, Bond, Dean, and Trotter.
Yeah. Oh, Trotter, really? That's it. Well, it's funny. We'll talk more about this Friday. I have a theory on Trotter, but they got to be better inside backer, Mike. It's just it has not been good. It's a little worse than I expected. I'll be honest with you. I had higher hopes.
Your corners, by the way, Slay is 1, and Rodgers and Ringo are tied for the other.
I mean, that is correct because I know that for a fact. But Mike, a lot of the times because sometimes it's like a PR intern.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're generally not correct. That happens to be correct. I hadn't even looked at it. But I'll look at it for discussion points on Friday. But we'll preview that game, what to look for when you watch the game Friday night in our segment on Friday.
All right, bud. We'll catch up with you then.
Sounds good, thanks.
Adam Kaplan, everybody. Yes, the Eagles' first depth chart, unofficial, by the way, of the summer came out. So let's dive into it. I'll just give you a couple quick thoughts. And Adam's right here. This is one of those things where the intern puts it together. But I think what it does show is a couple of things. One, the style of defense. We've been kind of saying, all right, who's going to do what? Is it like defensive end? Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat, they're your stand-up edge rushers. Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams. Now those guys, the interesting part for me is you get like Huff and Sweat on the ends, and then you got that 5-man front with Davis, Carter, and Milton Williams. So Milton Williams is officially kind of, according to this anyway, into the starting rotation, starting lineup on defense. The linebackers, they're all lumped in together as first teamers. White, Dean, Bond, and Trotter. Your corners are Slay on one side, Rodgers and Ringo on the other side, so they haven't decided who the starter there is, backed up by Quinyon Mitchell. And then after that, you've got McPherson, Job, Eli Ricks. The nickelback is Avonte Maddox, backed up by Tyler Hall. Your safeties are Gardner Johnson and Reed Blankenship. Your backups are Tristan McCollum and James Bradbury. All right, offense. A.J. Brown, backed up by Johnny Wilson. The line is Mailata, Dickerson, Juergens, Steen, backed up by Becton. They're not even listed as co-starters. Steen is the guy. Lane Johnson. Dallas Goedert, backed up by Grant Calcaterra. Devontae Smith, backed up by John Ross. Paris Campbell, backed up by Britton Covey. Saquon Barkley backed up by Kenneth Gainwell, followed by Will Shipley, then Lou Nichols, and then Hurts, Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee, and Will Grier. So not a ton of surprises. I guess the Steen getting that job, and it's not like the way they do it when they don't want to name a starter, they kind of put them side by side. They did that at the linebacker position. I'll put it up on the screen for the people that are watching on the X platform so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Follow me on the X platform at Mike Gill Show and use the hashtag SB Live. I'll show you what the depth chart kind of looks like so you can see it there. Let me put it in. There you go. So you can see, I mean, it's kind of small, but you could see in the linebacker spots where the guys are next to each other instead of a line kind of separating them from first team and second team. But yeah, I mean, Huff, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat backed up by Nolan Smith. Bryce Huff backed up by Brandon Graham. Then you have Jordan Davis backed up by Marlon Tuipulotu. Jalen Carter backed up by Thomas Booker. And Milton Williams backed up by Moro and Jomo. There's nobody, I mean, Ben Van Sumeren, Oren Burks, and Shaquille Quarterman, who just signed the other day. They are like the third and fourth and fifth team linebackers. So it's obvious that the four linebackers battling for two spots are White, Dean, Bond, and Trotter. And then you got Slay. I'm a little intrigued that Slay is backed up by Mitchell instead of, you got Rodgers and Ringo listed as the first team guys opposite Slay and not Mitchell in that mix there.
So let's backtrack a little bit, Mike, to kind of compare and contrast what we have seen in practice versus what the depth chart is.
Huh?
We have seen in the practices that it has been Bond and White getting the main first team with Dean as the primary rotate in. So it's a bit of a surprise that Trotter Jr. is in that conversation. So then the question becomes, is he really in the conversation or is it just him being listed there because they don't want to give anything away?
No, I think all four of those guys are in the conversation.
Okay. Like I said, he hasn't been part of the rotation, at least in practice. Now, we've seen Quinyon Mitchell a ton at slot corner and Avonte Maddox at safety. So now you're putting Mitchell behind Slay on the depth chart instead of putting Mitchell in the slot. So there's a question to be had. Are they playing Mitchell at nickel corner because they're giving him reps, or are they playing him there because they actually ever play him there?
I think that Fangio answered that question yesterday about Mitchell.
Well, if that's the case, then why isn't he on the other side?
I am a little surprised, but he's not in the nickel.
He's not in the nickel.
No.
But instead,
the question yesterday was, when you're evaluating Quinyon Mitchell as a prospect, did you have inside versatility in your head, or is that something that surprised you? He said, quote, no, that wasn't part of the equation. I do think when you drafted a corner, per se, in the first round, he needs to be a corner, and then if he can play inside, that's a bonus. This is a bonus right now that he's been able to play inside. We still really like him as a corner, though. The funny part is he's almost not even saying that inside corners are corners. He's just saying we like him as a corner, though. So I think Quinyon Mitchell ends up being the corner opposite Slay. That's why I said I'm a little intrigued that he's listed behind Slay on this depth chart.
Then why are they not giving him reps there?
Where, on the outside? I don't know that that's true. I think
he's been getting second-team reps almost exclusively.
That's not what I've been hearing. No, I've heard he has had plenty of first-team reps opposite Slay. But
he's not the guy getting the first reps,
moving all over the place for the most part.
Typically, each day it's been either Rodgers or Ringo getting the first-team reps to start the practices. It's been Mitchell coming in later. Why not just give him the first-team reps off the top?
Well, maybe, he has to try to earn them, maybe work his way up. It's not like they have stiffs there. That's the thing. It's one thing if you drafted a guy and there was nobody there. They do have guys that you have to at least show, hey, we're better than you. I don't have a problem with you having to work your way up the depth chart.
Gotcha.
By the way, Joel Embiid at halftime, 14.7 rebounds, a block, and an assist. He's a plus 25. He's 5 of 6 from the field, 3 of 3 from three-point range. So this is clearly Joel's best game so far.
Does this count as a wake-up call then?
Who cares, right?
Now you're going to who cares?
I mean, I said I don't even need him to play in the Olympics. Just get on the team and be around those guys. If you're going to go out there and he plays well, that's nice.
That's nice.
It's a nice
It's a nice sentiment.
Let's see. On the other side, we've got Knicks Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw's in the house. Don't forget, August 23rd, it's a Friday. Make a appointment to be with us at Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House, Egg Harbor Township, 3016 Ocean Heights Avenue, EHT, celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash at Vagabond. One of the great establishments out there. Great spot. We've been there a few times. Great place to watch the show. Great place to come out and watch, see what the Phils situation is that day. Ready? August 23rd, Phillies. You know they're playing on a Friday. I would imagine they're coming back home, right? Or they're home for a couple and then they go away. What did I just do? I went to the Eagles schedule. That's not very smart.
Well, you're in Eagles mode. It's football at 4.
Let's see. Schedule. Phillies. August 23rd. We got Phillies at the Royals. It's an 8:10 start. All right, so we come out, watch a show, get a little dinner, and then get ready for the Phils at 8:10.
Sounds like a good deal to me.
Sounds like a good time. We'll do that at Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House, EHT. Or Sports Bash on the other side. It's Knicks Nuggets, and they're coming up next.
You're listening with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
4:33, it's time for Knicks Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw is the host of the Shift podcast and the producer of The Locker Room, weekends with Billy Schweim, right here on 97.3 ESPN. He hosts Knicks Nuggets. Each day we take a little quick look at some of the big topics that are going on. I'm interested to see which Nuggets, after I just heard that update right there. You're putting some blame on one Rob Thompson. That's interesting because I just wrote an article about that today that says, relax, Philadelphia. The Phillies don't have a Rob Thompson problem. And now you are lowering yourself to these people who want to blame the manager. I am disgusted by you right now, Nick Earnshaw.
I know. I mean, I had to come in here and grind your gears a little bit, right? I mean, he has to have a little bit of blame.
Yeah, a little bit is fine.
Bit.
A little bit is fine. But these people who want him to be fired, people want him fired. I mean, they're all, that kind of stuff. It's just getting outrageous.
Yeah, that I'm not in that camp. You can't lump me into that part of the fan base who want him fired and it's all Rob Thompson's fault. No, I don't think he's got enough blame. I think he deserves a little bit more. JT Realmuto decision last night not to pinch hit for Garrett Stubbs. I think that's a little on Rob Thompson. I would have liked to seen JT. I know he wants to give him days off. We have talked about giving JT Realmuto days off here because he's getting older as a catcher and he just had knee surgery.
Sometimes that is out of the manager's hands. We had this discussion with David Sampson, who was on with us before, and said, look, there's a shoe and there's a sneaker day. All right? There's a cleats and a sneaker day. Some days the star players or the starters, they have a sneaker day, which means put your sneakers on. You're not playing no matter what tonight. That could have been what happened, number one. Number two, JT hasn't been hitting all that much, and it was a right-handed pitcher at the time. Look, I'm not going to sit here and argue that Stubbs is the better option, but I said to somebody earlier, he's got a hit for Stubbs there. I said, with who? Seriously. I mean, come on. Yeah, everybody's better than Stubbs, but no option there is one that is a definitive, how could you not do this? Yes, I get it. Stubbs is struggling and stinks for the most part, but a lot of times they don't want to use the backup catcher as the pinch hitter in case somebody ends up getting hurt. That's another problem in that instance.
That's true. It's true. But with Stubbs, he's the catcher, so he would go in to catch. I would tell if it was one of those
Stubbs is the catcher, he would go in to catch, but then if Realmuto ended up getting hurt, you don't have another catcher.
That's true.
Generally, the rule is you don't use your backup catcher on that night as the pinch hitter.
I hear you. Sometimes you got to defy the rules, Mike. Sometimes you need to do that. And
I get that, but my point is that's generally not on the manager.
I hear you. I hear it. But if it's one of those days that you're talking about, when it's the shoe day, that you're just wearing the shoes, well, guess what, JT? Go put your cleats on. We're in a big spot right now. We've lost a lot of games in a row. We could be losing ground in the division. Who knows? I mean, those are the type of decisions that are interesting.
Again, that goes back to the front office. They generally will say, listen, he is not playing today under any circumstance. So if you need him a pinch hitter, find somebody else. If you want to say, why not use somebody else, Weston Wilson, that goes back to another problem that this team has. The bench isn't good enough. And as I said at the beginning of today's show, if 1 through 4 are going to struggle, 5 through 9 simply is not good enough right now.
No, I'm with you there. If your guys aren't hitting, they're not hitting. That's why I'm not in the fire Rob Thompson camp. But, some of the decisions he's made, leaving guys in, maybe taking guys out too soon, that's where I would go. Maybe he needs a little bit of criticism, some of the blame right now. We know he's even-keeled guy. I like Rob Thompson as a manager. I like that he's even-keeled. He has that aura about him. But sometimes, you got to fire these guys up a little bit, maybe change the lineup up, something just to get this team sparked again, because they're going through a gigantic run. And he had a quote last night, Mike, I want to mention here. He said there's a lot of weird stuff happening that wasn't happening at the start of the year, and you just have to fight through it. That quote was interesting to me because a similar thing happened to the Eagles. Things weren't happening in the beginning of the year that happened at the end of the year. And it just makes you nervous a little bit.
Here's the thing, everybody says, you got to shake up the lineup. You got to do something. You got to do this. Where are you shaking this lineup up? The bottom of your lineup stinks. The top of the lineup's not hitting. What am I going to do? Seriously, am I going to move Bryce Harper to the 7 hole? That's where he deserves to be right now. But is that really happening? No. What am I going to do with Trey Turner? Am I really moving him? He's dropped 40 points in his batting average. But what am I going to do with him? Am I going to hit him 9th? I mean, these things aren't real. People just say, well, you got to shake something up. They moved Brandon Marsh to the 5 hole. He sucks. He shouldn't be hitting 5. Get him out of there. The problem is they don't have anybody else to hit in that spot either. Everybody from 5 down is hitting 240. They got a bunch of 240 hitters hitting 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. That's a problem.
This goes back to the deadline. This goes back to the deadline and why they should have done more, Mike.
I said today, 2 weeks later now, I think the trade deadline was 2 weeks ago today. Or is it 1 week ago? It was 1 week ago. It was one week ago.
1 week.
I think 1 week after the dust is settled. The move was Rooker. That's the guy they should have gone out and gotten. I don't know what it would have cost to get him, but it's apparent you need a guy in the middle of that lineup. He has been, I read his numbers off since June 24th today. He's hitting 350 with 15
Insane.
home runs. I mean, that's a guy that even if some guys were struggling, the way he's going right now, he could have kind of carried you through some of this. That's the guy that you probably look back and said, man, we probably should have made a bigger play there.
And it's funny. I heard you talking to Frank Close, Phillies writer for 97.3 ESPN.com, talking about prospects, right? Talking about Griffin McGarry's, the Mick Abels of the world. And, they've kind of fallen off a cliff here. For the most part, thought you'd be able to use them, maybe Griffin McGarry in the bullpen. And this is when you go back to trading those prospects. If you have a window, the Phillies window is right now, and they didn't make a strong enough move offensively to uplift this team and give them a spark. Because Austin Hayes, I'm sorry, but he's just not enough. He's not a difference maker. He's a platoon type of player, which is what he was in Baltimore, and he's just not enough of a difference maker in the heart of this lineup to elevate this offense. He's just not.
Agree. I said before, you added a guy and you hit him in the 9 hole. This team didn't need another 9 hole hitter. They needed a guy to hit in the middle of the lineup. So to me, I'm not blaming Rob Thompson as much as I got to look at Dave Dombrowski. Did he do enough?
Yeah, and remember, it's only a week since the deadline. It's only been since July 30th. There's still time to turn this thing around, but they're going through it right now.
Well, this is everything, though, Nick. This is back to the the offseason, where you take a look at what's failed you the last 2 years. You have a lineup where certain guys have been so hot that they've carried you past the Cardinals, past the Braves, past the Padres, past the Marlins. Those same guys are why you lost series, though. You didn't add anybody to complement them. The compliment was that some of the guys would be better. Marsh, Bohm, Stott. That hasn't happened. Bohm's gotten better. Stott's regressed. Marsh is what he is. I mean, everybody loves Stott because he's a great guy. I'm not refuting that. He can't hit 5 for a World Series team.
You mean Marsh? Marsh, yeah. You said Stott, yeah.
Stott too. I said Stott regressed, and Marsh can't hit 5 on a team that's going to win the World Series. Not in my opinion. Now, if they end up winning the World Series and Marsh is in the 5-hole, great.
It's because but if they win the World Series, it's because those guys in front of them got hot. I mean, that's why they win the World Series. If the guys in front of them got hot and they're able to carry that through all the way October through a World Series, it's because Harper, Turner, Schwarber, Realmuto, boom, those guys were scorching at the right time. That's how they win a World Series right now with the way the roster is constructed, because they don't have enough in the outfield. And Castellanos is Castellanos. I mean, he is what he is. He's streaky. Sometimes he'll get hot. He'll come up with a big hit every once in a blue moon, but you can't count on him for the most part in right field and at the dish. So if they win a World Series, it's because those guys in front of Brandon Marsh got hot. That's the only way they win. And obviously if they continue to pitch.
Yeah, I mean, to me, look, you win the World Series because Bryce Harper's the MVP or Trey Turner's the MVP or Kyle Schwarber's the MVP. You need games, though, where the other guys win you a game here and there. And the rest of the guys, for me, disappointing from Stott. Marsh, I'm not disappointed in. He is what he is. He's a 250 guy, with 12 home runs. It's kind of what Marsh is. I mean, Realmuto, he's struggling. He's a 250 guy. Castellanos, I mean, he'll get crazy white hot, and then he just goes ice cold. I mean, that's who he is. So that bottom half of the lineup has guys that, the one guy is Stott, where he's been really disappointing. You thought he was going to take that jump from 260, 70 to maybe 280, 90. People talked about him being a contender for the batting title.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy who's talked about as being like that next Utley-esque player, right? I mean, playing at second base, the big grand slam. Remember, he hit that big grand slam in the Marlins wild card.
I was there that
night.
I was there, dancing on my own, man.
I know, but you need guys like that to step up in those big moments. Stott just hasn't had that great of a year offensively. Like, I remember during the All-Star game when they were interviewing the players on the field during the game, I think it was Bryce Harper that said they were essentially missing the last piece. It was Stott because he hasn't had that good of a year.
Yep, 241 for Bryson Stott. Not what you signed up for. He's a big reason why this lineup isn't, kind of what you wanted to be. Because last year, if you remember, in that playoff run, he was hitting 5th for this team. Well, because he's struggling, now you got to hit Marsh in that spot. 241, 8 home runs for Bryson Stott. That's way off the numbers what you would hope. You figure last year, and when you think about where he was hitting in the 5-hole last year, he hit 280 with 15 homers. You were hoping 280 went up to maybe 292, and those 15 go up to maybe 18 to 20. Instead, you have 8, and you're at 241. You're 40 points off your average from last year.
Yeah, way down after last year. So we'll see if the Phils can get it back tonight. You going to stay up for this one? I stayed up for most of the last night, caught the ending in the morning.
I stayed up for, I think I was done around the 7th last night. So,
okay, I got to
the Stott pinch hitting thing I never got to.
Yeah, I got to that in the morning, the replay, watched that. I was like, that's fantastic.
Now, if you're asking me, would I hit for Stott? Probably, yes. I mean, the whole backup catcher, this, that, the other. It's 2 outs in the 9th inning. If we end up tying the game, I take my chances without the backup catcher, that whole situation. That said, 2 outs in the 9th with a runner on, I probably would have hit for Stott there, yes.
I'm not, my whole thing is I'm not putting everything on Thompson, but he still deserves a little blame for being the manager where they're at right now. They're not hitting. Just something. We need a spark somewhere down the line. Maybe Rob Thompson could do that with a lineup change. Who knows? Who knows what he could do? But he deserves a little bit of blame. Not the whole thing. When nobody's hitting, you can't really do much after that when your top guys can't hit the baseball. All right. Moving along to nugget number 2. I don't know if you saw this story, Mike. I want to stick with baseball here real quick. Did you see that they're going to play a baseball game at Bristol Speedway in Tennessee, where the Coca-Cola 600 has been held in the past, the famous NASCAR Speedway? The Braves and Reds will play in 2025 in Bristol, Tennessee, on a racetrack, essentially. Now, this has kind of been done before. It was done in 2016. Tennessee and Virginia Tech, 157,000 people attended at Bristol. They did a college football game there. Now they're going to try a Major League Baseball game next year. My mind was blown that they're going to try and figure this out and bring in dirt and try and build a field in the middle of where a racetrack is. I don't know. Your thoughts on this one? MLB's just going crazy here.
I like these games that are at these unique settings. I actually was in Williamsport last year. I didn't go to the game, but seeing a game at like a little stadium that only holds like 3,000 people, the Rickwood game this year, I think that's something that's cool and unique. The basketball games that they play on the airplane carriers and that kind of stuff.
Carriers,
I'm all into those type of unique settings for these sporting events. I'd like to see how they're going to put a baseball field in the middle of a NASCAR track. I guess that kind of gives you some indication how big those tracks are, that they can fit a baseball field in there. So yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm actually going to be in Richmond this weekend, and the Richmond NASCAR is there. Now, I'm not a NASCAR fan, but I would like to see like the speed, and like I hear that going to an event like that is unbelievable. So I might have to go and check out the track on Sunday when they're there, because that's our day off at the World Series on Sunday.
Yeah, you definitely got to check that out. I've never been to a NASCAR event either. When I was working in Delaware, there would be times I would see the Dover Speedway, the Monster Speedway, I think it's called, down in Delaware. But yeah, they're trying to get a baseball field on a speedway. This is crazy to me. Major League Baseball is pulling out all the stops. I love those different type of venues that they go to. Now, I don't love starting the season, as I've mentioned before, in the middle of the night in another country. That we could work on a little bit and figure that one out.
No, but I was at a game in London this year that was at a soccer stadium. So I'm in on those type of things. Sign me up.
No. We can't start the season in the middle of the night in another country.
Oh, I didn't say started. I just said I'm cool with playing games at these unique venues, like a soccer stadium in England. That field was fine. There was a couple bad sight lines that were tough to see certain spots, but other than that, sign me up.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I like doing all the different places, countries, whatever. My beef was in the start of the season. That was my only beef. But this is unique. This is creative. I'm with this thing. I wish the Phillies would play at a speedway. Maybe they could play at Dover in that speedway as well. Get the Phillies there.
Get them there. Get them out of Poconos, maybe. How about that?
Yeah, got a couple spots you could go to. All right, I got a couple minutes here before we go. Charles Barkley was on Podcast P, nugget number 3 here, Mike. I don't know if you saw this, but Embiid's been cooking today so far in the USA game. He had 14 points at the half, 7 rebounds, was 3 of 3 from 3-point land. But Barkley was on his teammates' podcast and said, I think that's one of the reasons he's always injured. I don't think he's in good enough shape. You got to be a little bit embarrassed by the way you played, referring to how he's played in the Olympics so far. Mike, your thoughts on Charles Barkley laying down heavy criticism on Joel Embiid and then him coming out today and performing well?
Not the first time that Barkley has criticized him. That one time, famously, him and Shaq really blasted him, and then Embiid scored like 50, and then he was on, and, I want to do well for you guys, blah, blah. It doesn't stick, Embiid, he's not playing well because of this, that, or the other thing. I think the international game is not built for a big man, number one. Barkley, Barkley's not wrong. I said this all season. Joel needs to reinvent himself, and the next version of him is the slimmer version of him. If he's going to keep coming back the same thing, you're probably going to get the same results. So if you keep coming back as the same style of player and don't add anything or change something to it, don't expect different results. And if he comes back and I said he's got to lose 25 to 30 pounds. I'm not one to talk, by the way, but I'm not making the money Joel Embiid's making, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm with Charles on this one. I think he's right. He's got to lose a little bit of weight. He's got to be slimmer. He's got bad knees. He's in his 30s now. He's going to go start heading towards the back end of his prime. You got to reinvent yourself in some way to get in better shape, and I'm with him. But today he comes out after criticism, and he drops 14 in the first half. So, that's just Joel Embiid if I've ever seen it.
Yeah, not the first time that Barkley's criticized him, and then he came back and showed him up. But Barkley can't be in his ear every single night, so unfortunately. But we'll see. I said I was cool with Embiid being on this team, and I didn't care if he ever played, just for the sheer fact of getting around these guys who were all champions and winners and being around different coaches and, see how it's all done differently. And hopefully that's something that ends up sticking for Joel Embiid.
Yep, the villain arc of Joel Embiid I'm going to very much enjoy. Hopefully it leads to a championship. We'll see, Mike. Nugget number 3 pack of nuggets for you today.
There you go. The Nuggets from Nick Earnshaw here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Nick, we'll see you tomorrow, man.
All right, Mike, talk to you tomorrow.
And Nick will be in on Friday's show, as he will be in for me on Friday along with Monday. Josh and Nick will be taking you on Friday. Nick will be around Monday, some days next week as well, as I'm heading down to the World Series. So Nick will be on a little bit more next week here on the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, Friday night, we got Eagles football for you right here on 97.3 ESPN with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick. Listen to every Eagles game all season long with Merrill and Mike. Eagles, Ravens, coverage at 7:30 Friday night on your home at the Shore for Eagles football. 97.3 ESPN, a little late night on the beach maybe, listening to the birds down on the beach.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
I think that Howie Roseman will do everything he can to have Nick Sirianni keep his job, because Howie Roseman does not want Bill Belichick to be the Philadelphia Eagles head coach. Sirianni is good enough. It's just, did you learn from your mistakes? And your mistakes last year involved really not knowing how to handle a situation when things went wrong. I would hope that he learned from that, and he has had enough success for me to believe that he actually is good enough to do it.
Chris Carlin today on Carlin versus Joe. He says Sirianni will keep his job behind this year. The reasoning is interesting because Howie Roseman doesn't want to bring Bill Belichick in to be the coach. That's an interesting take. But which coach in the NFC East has the most pressure on them this year? Is it Nick Sirianni, Mike McCarthy? You got Brian Daboll, who could be fired if they don't have a good season, and I don't think Dan Quinn has very much pressure down there as well. But those are your three options. It's really a Sirianni versus McCarthy field, right? Isn't that really who we're looking at? So which NFC East head coach is under the most pressure this year? Nick Sirianni or Mike McCarthy? Both of them are lame duck guys. Both of them have teams that, theoretically think can win the Super Bowl. So is it Nick Sirianni or is it Mike McCarthy? 609-403-0973. Dominic Foxworth, first up. Who has the most pressure, Sirianni or McCarthy?
I mean, if you believe like the scuttlebutt out of Philadelphia, he almost lost his job last season coming off of a damn near Super Bowl win. The issues that were plaguing them last year have been addressed with the coordinators, new coordinators, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio on offense and defense. So if they do not have success this season, I don't think you can point the finger anywhere else but at the head coach, and I would assume that he'd be out of there.
So he thinks Sirianni is the guy under the most pressure. Let's kind of think about this. He talked about, and Dominiqu's the one who said before about he thinks the Eagles have the best team because the coordinator changes. And he just addressed the coordinator changes there. So it sounds like he thinks they made the necessary moves so that if the team does not do well, there's only one other move to make. He's not wrong about that.
No, and if that is how you're delineating it, then he's not wrong at all. Because if you're delineating it as, look, we did everything we were supposed to. We changed the coordinators, check mark. We brought in veteran coordinators, extra check mark, right? We fixed the secondary. Howie Roseman talked about that at the last press conference. All right, check mark. You added linebackers, check mark. You checked all the boxes. So if you check all the boxes and it still doesn't get better, then yes, there's only one option left.
Yeah, I mean, you can't keep changing the coordinator, so that's over.
Right.
The weird part would be then, you're almost pigeonholed into one of two things. Elevating one of the coordinators to the head coach.
I think that's part of the reason, maybe not directly, but maybe indirectly, why they hired these two coordinators. Because one, Fangio has been a head coach, and number two, Kellen Moore has interviewed for head coaching jobs.
Do you think Vic Fangio is really going to be another head coach in this league?
I don't think so, but I think if something went sideways this year and Sirianni was let go, I think having a guy with head coaching experience on the staff does help.
I think it would be Kellen Moore would be the next head coach of the team. If not, then you're almost in a situation where you're getting another offensive coordinator and another defensive coordinator. So I don't think – that's why I think Sirianni has to almost not make the playoffs.
Well, that's why I said just a moment ago that Kellen Moore has interviewed for jobs, for head coaching jobs. So he would obviously be in the conversation.
Yeah, but my point is I don't think the Eagles want to have to get another – yes, because he could be the head coach and then call the plays.
Correct.
But then you're having another – but that's why I think Sirianni is a little safer than McCarthy is here. By the way, Sirianni, just to throw this out there, Eagles head coaches winning percentage in their careers. Number 5, Jim Trimble. Number 4, Rich Kotite. Number 3, Andy Reid. Number 2, Greasy Neal. Number 1, Nick Sirianni.
What a flawed list.
His winning percentage is .667. Andy Reid's is .583.
There's nobody in our audience who would have guessed 2 of those names on that list.
Well, Rich Kotite probably not, yes. But
Greasy Neal, really?
Greasy Neal was back in the heydays of the Eagles.
Listen, just because a dork like me knows who Greasy Neal is, you're assuming the rest of the audience would know.
.667. His winning percentage is far and away the best. By the way, Greasy Neal's winning percentage is .594. That's number 2. First 3 seasons, Eagles head coach. Number 5, Andy Reid and Chip Kelly. They're tied.
Correct.
Number 2 and 3 are tied. Rich Kotite, Doug Peterson. Number 1, Nick Sirianni. His winning percentage, .667, is the best in the history of the franchise over their first 3 years. Since 2021, NFL head coaches. Number 5, Nick Sirianni. Number 4, Kyle Shanahan. Number 3, Sean McDermott. Number 2, Mike McCarthy. And number 1, Andy Reid. So there's your list of the top 5 NFL head coaches since 2021. So I think Sirianni would really have to basically be a non-playoff team or have something completely fall off the rails again, because I think what Carlin said is right. The Eagles want to keep continuity at that spot. And part of the continuity is they want to keep Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio and keep that together. That was their blueprint to a championship season a couple of years ago. When they went to, I say a championship season, they won the NFC championship, they went to a Super Bowl. It was because of Nick Sirianni and having strong coordinators around him. They don't want to have to mess that up. They like Sirianni, and if they get another good season, keeping those coordinators together, even if it doesn't result in a Super Bowl.
Right, because, for example, Sirianni could go to, let's say, the second round of the playoffs, lose in overtime, let's say. He's not getting fired. You know, you have a modicum of success. He's not going anywhere.
So, the opponent in this conversation would be Mike McCarthy. Now, he has the second best record of any coach in the NFL since 2021. So, which coach is under the most pressure in the NFC East? Is it Nick Sirianni or Mike McCarthy, Tim Hasselbeck?
I think it's Mike McCarthy. I mean, just look at the situation, the fact that he's basically a lame duck coach because of his contract, because of the other contract situations with star players. I think that's the hot seat. I mean, that was a hot seat. It felt like when the playoff loss to Green Bay happened last year, that seat was extremely hot.
I don't think there's any question it's McCarthy here. I mean, outside of them winning a Super Bowl, I think McCarthy is done. I think we're at that point. Like, they have to win the Super Bowl, I think, for McCarthy to stick around. I don't think Sirianni has to win the Super Bowl because the Eagles value the continuity and the stability. I think the Cowboys, because of where Jerry Jones is in his tenure and career, they have to win before he's out of gas, if you will. And McCarthy not winning the Super Bowl this year when Jerry thinks they should, I think he is under more pressure.
I think McCarthy's lucky he has a job right now in Dallas. Not in general, but I mean just in Dallas, because of the fact that Jerry Jones, he is a strange individual. I mean, he wakes up and has some strange opinions. You ever listen to his interviews he has on Dallas radio? The fact that that guy didn't wake up after that horrible loss in the postseason and just say, you know what, I've seen enough. And if they went to the whole offseason and didn't give the guy a contract extension, nothing. He's just like, we're all in for next year. And then apparently being all in is not paying anybody. Well, it's almost like he's setting up McCarthy for failure.
Yeah, well, and it's like the whole situation of the way the two teams run their organizations. The Eagles go out and identify which players they want to extend so that they don't get into cap hell. Yep. And then you have the other side of the coin, which is the Dallas Cowboys, who are still trying to figure out what to do with the two most important players on their team, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott.
I was actually 3, Micah Parsons.
And Parsons as well. You could throw him in there as well.
Remember, Parsons wants to get paid too. He's up.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind that those things matter. I think the biggest difference between Philadelphia and Dallas over the last couple of years is how the two teams are run. Dallas has had better talent, but the problem has been their cap situation and their contractual situations have been a mess for them. Philadelphia runs laps around them in that situation.
Yeah, I would have had these guys all locked up by now. And Jerry Jones...
Well, just look at what the Eagles did with Devontae Smith, who I believe was in the same draft class as CD.
Yes, he was.
So there you go.
He was next year. CeeDee Lamb was the same class as Justin Jefferson.
That's correct. CeeDee Lamb. Oh, yeah, because
the COVID year.
Yeah, but wasn't Smith in that draft
Smith was
class?
the next year because he was in the same draft as Micah Parsons.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, the Eagles already went out and identified
But no, the Devontae Smith
before.
Right. Devontae Smith is an important point because the Eagles got Smith done.
Jerry Jeudy was in the class with Smith.
Smith, correct.
All these Alabama
Jalen Reagor,
guys.
Mike.
Yeah. All the Alabama guys.
Yeah, that was the Jalen Reagor Eagles draft.
Don't remind me.
I just did.
But go ahead.
No, my point is that you just brought up the point. The Eagles signed Devonta Smith in the same draft as Micah Parsons. You would think the Cowboys would be like, the Eagles just gave Devonta Smith a contract. Maybe we should get around and give Micah Parsons a deal.
Yeah, well, the Eagles not only did that to Smith, they also went out and identified A.J. Brown and paid him.
Yeah, the Eagles seem to find a way to do it every single time.
Yeah. If you look back at the history of teams that have gotten good and sustained success, it's not the only way, but it's the best way to do it is go out and identify these guys and try to lock them up ahead of time. You try to lock them up ahead of time and make them happy and not have to have all the distractions like Dallas has at there. And I think San Francisco is now falling into that possibility as well. We talked about that earlier with this Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams. By the way, they had an injury today at practice, Christian McCaffrey. But the Cowboys have a history of not identifying guys and then waiting to do these deals, and in the end,
losing them.
They do get them done.
Or they lose them.
But it's not a great cap management philosophy. It generally doesn't work out well for them. No. They have and they re-sign their own players. It's just at when they end up doing it and what that does to their cap situation.
Right. Like, for example, they waited too long. They lost Tony Pollard is one example. Another example is in order to re-sign Dak Prescott, which they did the previous contract that he's currently on, they had to get rid of Amari Cooper. So it's like, okay, great, you signed Dak, but you got rid of his receiver, right? So it's the idea that Dallas, they might make the right move, like, for example, with Lawrence, right? They gave Lawrence a contract a couple of years ago, but then it was like, okay, well, you lost some of your linebackers, some of your safeties.
Which NFC East head coach is under the most pressure, and why? Tim Hasselbeck gives a big reason why.
I think the fact that Bill Belichick is out there, people want to connect the dots to the Giants. I think it's easier to connect the dots with Belichick to Dallas than it is to New York in terms of, an owner being willing to, to bring someone like Belichick in. So, I think those are the factors that are huge in Dallas.
Look, the NFC East is the glamour division. New York, Philadelphia, Dallas, Washington, they're all the big markets. To get Bill Belichick into the NFC East is a dream come true for the NFL. To get Belichick in one of those big-time markets and have him be a part of that. But Dallas is the spot where you would think that Jerry Jones says, I only have X amount of cracks at this. I got to go out and get the best guy I can. And that, again, puts, to me, McCarthy on the hotter seat than a guy like Sirianni. Now, I don't know how many more cracks at the apple Jeffrey Lurie has, but I think that's more on his terms than Jerry Jones's terms.
I will also add, the last time Jerry Jones ceded control to a more dictatorship-like head coach was Bill Parcells. And Bill Parcells is where Belichick comes from in that coaching tree, right? So maybe there's a part of Jerry Jones that says, you know what? I've let somebody else pull the strings before. I had success. I trusted that situation. I can trust it again.
An interesting take here from Jeff Darlington, who says the 3 biggest head coaching situations to keep an eye on are all in the NFC East.
You see 3 coaches on there in Sirianni, McCarthy, and Dable who might literally be 1, 2, and 3 when it comes to the hottest seats in the NFL, all within the same division with Mike Vrabel and, to Tim's point, Bill Belichick, both available. There has never been a worse time in the history of the NFL to be on the hot seat, and you've got 3 teams in the richest division in sports currently on that hot seat.
Yeah, and I was kind of hinting at the same thing is, look, you get a Bill Belichick, in New York with the Giants where he was before. That is a high-profile move for the biggest market in your league. Washington doesn't factor into this, but Philadelphia, a consistent winner. And if they make a move like this, it's a similar situation to what happened when you fired Doug Peterson, a guy who went to the Super Bowl. Now, he didn't win it, but then you pull the plug on him 2 years after he ends up getting you to a Super Bowl and replace him with Bill Belichick. But again, I go back to answer the question that started the conversation, which NFC East head coach is under the most pressure? To me, it's Mike McCarthy, far and away, followed by Sirianni, and then Brian Daboll. Look, Brian Dable's in a tough spot. That team doesn't have expectations. And here's the thing that I keep thinking about as I'm watching the Hard Knocks. I've only seen the first Hard Knocks, by the way. I just can't find the second, third. How many have they had so far? What number are they on?
How many episodes?
Yeah.
Well, the Giants thing is done.
Yeah, but how many was there?
I thought there were 5.
Was there 5? I saw the first one. I can't find 2, 3, 4, or 5. I'm really disappointed.
Because you don't have Max.
I don't have Max. But the first one I found on YouTube. Now I can't even find that one.
Ooh, they must have found it and flagged it.
It's really disappointing because I was really enjoying that. But here's my takeaway from that.
Yeah.
Joe Shane brought Brian Daboll. Like, they were kind of a package Buffalo
From
deal,
Buffalo,
right?
yeah.
He doesn't want to have to fire his friend. And that team is not in position to win. So if they win 5, 6, 7, 8 games, does Joe Shane have to fire his friend? Or does he say, I'm going to give you a 4th year at trying to get this in the right direction? They're not anywhere near in the right spot, quarterback-wise, offensive line-wise.
Well, you just said it's key right there, the quarterback. Remember, they wanted Drake May this year. I think that if they go through this year, Daniel Jones looks like we think he looks. He's Daniel Jones, for goodness sake. I think they can go to the owner and say, look, give us 1 more year. We're going to hit the reset button on the quarterback. It gives the head coach at least 1 more year to work with.
That's why I think, because of their relationship, that is a possibility. The only thing I might throw into that is if Mara steps in and he's so distraught, if Barkley has a big year and the Giants fail, and he says, you made the decision not to bring Barkley back. I wanted him back. We need a new coach.
It's certainly possible. But to me, if he's mad about the Barkley thing, he should blame Joe Shane, not the head coach.
That's a possibility. That's definitely a possibility. Yeah, he could say, you're both gone.
Or he could say the GM's gone. Maybe he looks at Daboll like, look, you got to the postseason with an average roster. Maybe I need a better GM. Maybe the head coach isn't the problem.
Yeah, but the new GM doesn't want to keep they'd both
true.
be gone. I think that's a package deal.
It's a package deal?
Yeah, I think so.
If it's a package deal, then it's Belichick and who coming
I'm telling you, I'm telling you, the interesting thing in the NFC East is that generally the chaos is in Washington, and it's really quiet down there.
Well, they got rid of Daniel Snyder. That's why.
Yeah, but exactly. But my point is, yes, we know why. It just keep that in mind. Like Washington's usually the team that you don't think about, or there's chaos down there. There's all sorts of scandals and something happening. It's really quiet down there. Just haven't heard a whole heck of a lot about them. And I've been saying for a while, a lot of the stuff that I keep talking about is if Jaden Daniels can be the guy who's the best quarterback of this class or up there with Caleb Williams, that Washington team might be the one that is more interesting than people are giving them credit for.
I think there's two questions you have to ask about Washington. One, how much do you believe in Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator? Not the head coach, the offensive coordinator. Do you believe in him?
I don't mind Kingsbury.
Okay,
especially with a college quarterback, like, a Daniels type of quarterback who's, coming from a college system, and now you pair him up. I mean, he had some really good MVP level years with Murray in Arizona.
Right. So if you believe he's that level of coordinator, then that's one positive in the column for Washington. The other question is, do you think Dan Quinn is going to be a better head coach than Ron Rivera was?
Yeah. Yep, I do. And they're similar because both of them defensive guys, both got to Super Bowls and
different
lost.
Personalities, though.
Yeah, Quinn is a very positive, high-energy guy,
exactly.
And Rivera very more laid back and reserved. But I think that I don't think Quinn is a Super Bowl champion coach, but he did get the Falcons, a miserable franchise, to a Super Bowl and probably was the better team on that day.
Right. So based on the two answers you just gave, then the answer is yes, you should be afraid of Washington as a playoff team this year.
609-403-0973. Mike, I absolutely love the distraction, upheaval, fan disappointment, culture damage that both Dallas and San Francisco are going through, and I hope it continues. Lamb, Williams, and Ayuk sit out all preseason, hold pressers, and demand trades. I said before, earlier today, the 49ers story is starting to get a little bit weird and whirlwindy down there, where the left tackle, he wants a contract. The receiver, he wants a trade. Now the running back gets hurt. All in the avenue leading up to Brock Purdy's going to want a contract. You got that happening. I just feel, and I brought that stat out earlier, Phil, no NFC team has gone to the Super Bowl one year and lost and gone back the next. 50 years. It hasn't happened in 50 years. The last time it happened was the 70s, and
there were fewer teams back then, and it was a 14-game schedule, I believe.
That's true as well. But it just feels like it's maybe not set up for the 49ers to represent the NFC in the NFC Championship game. Maybe, maybe not. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. And Phil and everybody out there, I hope we'll see you guys at Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House on the 23rd. Make an appointment to stop on out and see us live at Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House. That's over in Egg Harbor Township, Ocean Heights Avenue. And we're going to be out there celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. We'll have 350 Bud Light specials throughout the show. They got great taps there as well. Awesome food. We'll be there 2 to 6 celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash live at Vagabond Kitchen and Tap House. 3016 Ocean Heights Avenue. That's Friday, August 23rd. The next 2 Fridays, we will not be having Happy Hour Friday shows. We're going to take a couple weeks off, and then we'll be back on the 23rd, which also, by the way, starting Monday the 12th, we're back at Ocean, the Gallery, Bar, Book, and Games to start off another NFL season. As the Eagles play Friday, we'll be at Ocean on Monday to break it all down on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.
We have the... Ready to level up your career? Text DISH to 44043 now to dive into a world of exciting technician opportunities at DISH. From cutting-edge technology to a supportive work environment, DISH offers the perfect platform for your success. Connect with us today to discover how you can be part of a dynamic team driving innovation. Connect today and join the DISH family, where innovation meets opportunity. Text DISH to 44043 to kickstart your journey towards a rewarding career.
Traffic. The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
5:30 on a Sports Bash Tuesday. Phil's tonight out in L.A. against the Dodgers. I'm Mike Gill. I was supposed to go to a Weezer show one time. This is Weezer, by the way. Hash Pipe playing behind me. Driving up the Parkway to the show. I guess it was in like Monmouth, whatever facilities up there, up that way. PNC Arts Center, maybe. Listening to the radio, and show was canceled.
Oh.
So I've never seen Weezer.
That sucks.
Yeah. Band I'd like to see.
Put on the list. That and Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, I'm missing the Pumpkins. I'm not happy about it. That show is Friday, Pumpkins. Green Day. Not happy about it.
Sorry, Mike.
This hour of the show, though, is brought to you by my friends over at Kia Acura. For a great car buying experience, check out Kia Acura right there on Chilton Road, EHT, small but friendly dealer. Stop in, talk to Rocco. They got the new 2025 MDXs. I got the 2024 MDX. Love it. It's fantastic. Just ton of space, roomy, and drives fantastic. You know, one of the things I like about it, I didn't think I was going to like it about it, but the car has one of those like screens, but you don't have to do the touch screen. It's got like the little, radio changer, which is such a big help because, reaching across and trying to touch screen that thing while you're driving is not conducive. So this has a little switch right in the middle. You just boop, boop, boop. That's really nice. You know what else this has that I've never driven with before? The gear shifter. They don't have the gear shifter. It's one of those where you push the buttons.
Oh, the button up and down, like on top and the bottom?
Yeah, it's like you push drive. There's like a little thing you push for park and push for reverse. It's a little different.
It's definitely different. Yeah, it's awkward for a lot of people.
I caught on to it pretty quick. It's also got a little mouse pad that you use to like change like from radio to like satellite or
that's interesting.
Stuff like that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I love it, man. I've been driving it all over the place.
Well, it sounds like you're having a grand old time.
I am having a grand old time, and they have the MDXs. Although they are running out. If you want mine, you can take it back from me. I'm just borrowing it. They were kind enough to let me drive one around for the last couple of weeks here, but
well, you got to speak firsthand experience.
I love it. You know, it's funny because I do have my car is sitting in my driveway. I haven't driven it for like a week. I like this car better.
There you go. That's an endorsement right there for it. You like this car better than your car.
I do.
That's an endorsement right there.
I like the car better than my car. So
Kia Acura of Atlantic City.
All right, let's go to today's edition of The Big Three.
Mike, I want to start with this story. So another layer of the charade of amateurism has been removed today, Mike. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has told reporters that they are working to have a mandatory injury report like the Big Ten has starting this year. Another layer off the amateurism label. Because remember in years past, injury reports were like a no-no in college sports, right? You didn't talk about it. You didn't know about it. If somebody was injured, if they were not going to get injured. Last year, the Big Ten became the first Power 5 conference to institute game day availability injury reports, and the SEC is going to follow suit this year. So another layer off the amateurism charade.
It should be like that, though, if you're betting. You should have the injury reports because college is wonky.
Well, what's interesting is Greg Sankey did not mention the gambling. Well, of course, why would he? But he says part of the reason why they wanted to do it is because he felt that some of the schools were creating a unfair competitive situation. For example, schools like LSU and Florida have been releasing weekly injury reports all of last year, but many of their opponents refused to do the same.
College is really shady, though.
Right. So Sankey says, getting the injury reports creates a better light to be shown on the sport.
Yeah. Listen, the college game has gone down the toilet with what's happening with all that stuff. So if you're going to make it, if you're going to, make it closer to the pros, you might as well do what the pros are doing. I don't see any problem with the injury report having some transparency because the college game is a little wonky. You're watching the game, they don't talk about it, you don't ever know because some guy's playing quarterback for a quarter. They're switching guys in and out.
Well, it's like what happened with Alabama last year. When I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, the quarterback for Alabama. Jalen.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, I know who you're talking about.
Well, when he got benched in the South Florida game last year, everyone was like, "Is he hurt? What's going on with him?" And then you found out later that it was basically just Saban turning Milroe. Yeah, Jalen Milroe.
I said Milroe.
Not James Monroe here.
Nope.
But no, when Jalen Milroe got benched in the South Florida game last year, people were wondering, is he hurt? Is something academically going on? There was no answer. Then you find out a week later that Saban basically said that, hey, me, the offensive coordinator, were just seeing if the other quarterback could give us a spark, and he was horrible, so we're going back to Milroe. Situation like that, if you had an injury report, you would know ahead of time, hey, Milroe is not playing in this game, and here's why.
Yeah, no, the transparency, somebody tweeted at me on the X platform the other day asking me what I thought was going to happen with Florida State. To my knowledge, nobody wants Florida State.
That's correct.
They're a pain in the ass.
The SEC doesn't want them because they see no value in having them. They already have a Florida school. And the ACC isn't over them because they keep being a pain. And the Big Ten doesn't want them because they're a pain. And the Big 12 is like, well, we already got our teams for now. So good luck with that.
Yeah, I wonder, though, is there going to be another shakeup in all of this? And I wonder if some of it is downsizing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does the Big Ten... maybe that doesn't sound right now that I'm thinking about it. Because the Big Ten doesn't need Rutgers to begin with. They took Rutgers because they wanted the New York market. But do they now not find as much value in that because they went out and got the L.A. market? Or, no, we have L.A. and we have New York.
Or do they say in today's world where media markets are not as important as they used to be in the cable world, now in the streaming world, does it matter?
Good point. Although they just signed all these college football deals with ESPN, Fox, they still have linear cable channel deals.
They do, but some of these deals are now looping in some of the streaming packages, like with Peacock, for example, and NBC Sports. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do eventually. We didn't get a chance to touch on this yesterday, Mike, but a guy who Sixer fans have been wanting look like he is off the trade block. According to reports, Lauri Markkanen, who was a guy who could have been traded, is getting a new 5-year deal worth $200 million. It looks like the deal will be signed Wednesday or later this week, according to The Athletic, Mike. So Sixer hopes and dreams, fans' hopes and dreams of a Lauri Markkanen coming to Philadelphia looks like it's out the window.
Yeah, I kind of moved on, but that could have been a trade deadline guy.
Sure.
You would have heard a lot about him at the trade
expiring
deadline.
Contract.
Yep, I definitely think that he would have been an awesome fit on this team too. Like he's the guy. Like, can you imagine Markkanen as the stretch 4 with Paul George playing the? I kind of left that dream in the past. It was something I just didn't think was going to happen.
You let go of that a while ago.
Yeah, and I did see something like Golden State was still trying to get involved there, but I didn't think that was going to happen.
Well, at least for Utah Jazz fans, they get to keep Markkanen in there. Although it'll be interesting to see, Danny Ainge has been really slow rolling this rebuild out there in Utah. And we know the owners are very much interested in this hockey team they just acquired.
It's not an easy place to do a rebuild, man. I mean, you got to hit on your draft picks because you're not getting free agents to go there. And
draft picks are not what they used to be.
No, exactly. I was going to say, and the fact that you got to really hit on a draft pick. It's hard, man.
I mean, you are literally playing roulette now in the NBA draft and hoping a guy pans out.
They took the Duke kid, right?
What's that?
They took the Duke kid.
Yeah.
Who was like dating his,
Oh, yeah, that story where he's dating that woman who's like 5-6 years older than him.
Yeah, it was his babysitter.
Yeah, and like she like basically like got him to like ditch his family and bail on them, and
it's a weird story.
The family hasn't talked to him in years, and he won't talk to them.
Yeah, it was very apropos that he ended up in Utah.
Yeah. Almost makes you wonder if Utah was the only team that was going to draft him, but that's another
well,
story.
did everybody have this background knowledge, or?
Oh, I'm sure they did. I mean, these NBA teams, all these professional teams, they do research. I'm sure they know more stuff than we do.
I didn't hear it until after. I mean, I didn't see that come out.
I didn't see the story about him in the I guess it's his fiancée now, or whatever it is, until like the day of the draft, I think it was. And I was like, wait, what?
It's a weird story.
Also makes you wonder, did an NBA team leak that information out, and that's how it got out? How about that?
No, I thought it was his brother. Or his mother.
I thought it was his brother did an interview.
Yeah, his brother and his mother, but I think both commented on it.
Well, Utah, a lot of interesting people.
By the way, your Team Canada got knocked out.
I was just going to bring that up. My Team Canada got knocked out, so my hopes and dreams
by the team I told you.
Well, I was going to get to that. So, Team Canada, I placed my hopes and dreams on O Canada, and they let me down. They started the game horribly offensively, Mike, and the French team took a lead and never let go of it.
Yeah, I mean, I you gave me that Team Canada, and I said that team's good. I didn't think they were like the Silvers, though. To me, I liked a couple. France was one of them.
You did say France was one of them. You said France was one of the teams that you really liked. I said I liked Canada, and then it just happened that France and Canada faced each other. And now Canada won't get a medal, and France has a chance at a medal.
Yeah, so, and U.S. beat Brazil today. This is in the men's side, so who's left?
So it is France, United States, Serbia, and Germany. Germany beat Greece.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. What's his name had a big game? Wagner. So who is the U.S. playing next?
That's what I'm pulling up right now. I'm pulling up the actual bracket. But the big deal, by the way, about Germany winning is that, Giannis was on the Greece team.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you took out Giannis. Like you're taking out one of the stars of the NBA out of the whole picture.
Yeah, the rest of the Greek team was not all that good, though.
Well, it's not like the German team is like the greatest team of all time.
No, but I think they had a little bit more like NBA talent.
Gotcha. So you're saying that they had deeper talent.
Yeah, I mean, Wagner's a pretty damn good player.
He is?
And I don't know that he was the only guy on that team. I think they had more than just that.
So I'm pulling up the basketball schedule right now and trying to see when the next game is here. See, this is a bad job by me. I went to the wrong website platform. That's a women's bracket. I don't want the women's bracket. I want the men's bracket.
Yeah. So France is in the semis. So there's 4 teams left then, right?
Yeah, it's France, U.S., Germany, and Serbia.
Okay, Serbia is Jokic. That team's decent.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know who's on. They beat Australia, which has a lot of NBA players on it too. So they beat Australia. Canada has a lot of NBA players. France has a lot of NBA players. Germany has a decent NBA talent on it, though. But I don't know. There you go, the schedule. What do you got here? When is the basketball? It's the men's basketball. That's today.
They play next on Thursday, according to what I'm looking at.
Okay.
So Thursday is the semifinal games, but it doesn't actually list who the semifinals are, which is ridiculous because the games are already done.
It's been very difficult to, and I agree, it has been very difficult to try to find this stuff, I find. The closing ceremonies are what, Sunday?
Sunday.
This thing flies by, man. It's like you get in this routine where you're watching every night, and then it just gone.
Yeah, you're getting all the updates. You're seeing who's doing well in the pool and on the gym mats and on the Philly track and field and the basketball. And then one day it's just over, and you're like, what happened?
That's it.
Comes into your life and runs out right away.
That's all it
like
happens.
Like a summer fling.
Yeah, and it's funny, you end up kind of having it on in the background at all times, it feels like. And I always say I like the live afternoon sports.
When you think about right now, if the U.S. doesn't win it all, Mike, how disappointing is it?
Well, anytime the men's basketball team doesn't win in basketball.
By the way, I finally found it. So the U.S. is going to play Serbia on Thursday.
Okay. They played before.
Correct. And then France will play Germany. So
France plays Germany.
France versus Germany, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 8th. U.S. versus Serbia, 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay. So, let's see. The men's, that's the soccer team. National basketball team roster. Let's see who's on that team. I know they have Schroeder, Wagner, Isaac Bonanga, Daniel Tice, the other Wagner. Yeah, they've got at least, a handful of NBA
players. They have depth. They have multiple NBA caliber players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have a handful of guys.
France and Germany is an interesting matchup because outside of Wembanyama, it's not like there's like a superstar on the floor necessarily.
No, like today, was it today or they played last night? Yeah, they had a very balanced. Wagner had 13, Schroeder 14, Bonanga. I remember Bonanga getting traded. He was the guy that got traded in some deal. I think Washington and the Lakers made a deal one time, but Daniel Tice is the guy who kills the Sixers all the time.
Yep, he's a
Greece's
thorn.
team. You've got no one you've ever heard of before in your life,
except for Giannis.
Exactly, and Giannis's brother's not even on that team.
Which I didn't understand how that worked. He's got like 3 brothers, and he's the only Antetokounmpo on the team.
I always wonder, the guy played for Brazil today, and he had 27 points in the game. And you're thinking, if you're good enough to score 27 points against the United States in a game, how do you not have a game? Right. How do you not in the NBA? Yeah. No, the guy had 30. Guy had 30 points.
You shortchanged the 3 points, Mike. Come on.
Yeah. He had 30 points today. I thought I read that he had 27. So the guy had 30 today against you. You're telling me that nobody could use a guy that can score 30 against this team?
I guarantee you they could.
And it finished with 14 points in 12 minutes.
Yeah, he finally listened to Charles Barkley.
14 points, 7 rebounds, and an assist and a block is what he ended up. He was 3 for 3 from 3-point range. So there you go.
I'm sure some people will be mad about that.
He got booed pretty unmercifully, apparently.
Speaking of 3, Mike, that is today's big 3.
All right, 546. This hour of the show, it's brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road, Egg Harbor Township. Your small but friendly dealer. Phil's tonight. It's Sanchez and Kershaw. Jerry and Brigantine, appreciate the message. Says, love hearing about football. Great show today. Jerry, that's very nice of you to say. We did our best. At least I did. I can't speak for you.
I thought I did my best, but maybe I didn't.
I'm saying maybe you didn't. I don't know. I'm not judging. I'm saying I don't want to speak for you. Did you do your best today?
I gave it my best.
Okay. You didn't, I was telling the story earlier. I went to the deli today. I got a sandwich. The lady said $8.99, and I told her, you didn't charge me enough. That was my good deed for the day. Now, Josh says he would not have told the woman that they didn't charge him enough.
I might not have noticed. How about that?
That's a bad job then. If you don't know that a sandwich, a drink, and this fruit salad is more than $8.99.
Again, it depends on what place I'm at.
Well, if you were at the place I was at, you would know that it's more than $8.99.
Okay, well, that's maybe, yeah.
It's definitely more. Any sandwich you're getting is $8.99.
It's one of those places when you walk in the door, you know you're spending money.
Dan in EHT, always positive, says the Phillies season is over. Enjoy the summer, everybody. They are a waste of time turning into the telecast. OMG. Casty, Marsh, and Stott stink. Romuto hasn't hit a ball hard since his return.
Dan EHT, ray of sunshine.
Maybe pick up some mini golf, Dan. Now, Dan, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm not even going to rip your text. I'm just going to say, this is my answer to you. When the Phillies make the playoffs, you're not allowed to watch.
Ooh.
Okay? You said Philly season's over. Enjoy the summer. Waste of time. You, Dan, are not allowed to watch the playoffs. Okay? Now, you can either take your comment back or say, fine, I won't watch the playoffs. Let me know.
Find out. Coming up next.
Sports Bash. Coming up on 97.3 ESPN.
It's this.
Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts. Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, 5:53, getting ready to wrap up the show. Phil's tonight. Did the lineup come out last night while you were on the air, or were you not paying attention to that?
It did come out when I was on the air last night. Yeah.
So, I used it about 6:30.
I think it was around like 6:40 it came out. I have to double check exactly. But
sometime in that range, right?
But I remember it came out because I read it on the air. That's all I remember.
So we'll see the lineup probably about a half hour, 40 minutes from now. I'm interested to see if they go with Marsh and Stott and the lefties tonight against Clayton Kershaw. So keep an eye on that. What else? Brandon Ayuk, watch. We'll see what happens there. You got Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and the Patriots all kind of trying to make a deal there.
How about memory recall, Mike? It was 6:43 last night.
Good stuff.
I was 3 minutes off.
Dan in EHT says he didn't answer my question. Did he? Nope. I said if they make the playoffs, Dan's not allowed to watch.
So what did he answer?
He said, as Jim Mora would say, playoffs? Now Dan doesn't think they're going to make the playoffs. I said, all right, if they make the playoffs, Dan is not allowed to watch.
So it sounds like Dan doesn't even believe they're making the playoffs.
David Violent, don't ever pay more than you need, Mike. I went to the art museum. Park was 40. I'm about 7th in line to leave. After about 5 minutes of us waiting, front car backs up, park, gate opens, stays open. All the cars driving through except the car. Guy stops, keeps scanning the ticket. Yeah, I'm not on that thing, the $40 parking. I already am somebody who thinks charging more than $5 to park is piggish. And there should be a cap on parking. You're putting a car on a spot. You're lucky I'm using the spot. Should be charging me for it. So in that instance, David, I would not tell the person because I already think the parking people are ripping us all off. But the sandwich lady, I felt bad and I paid the full price. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.